You wake in the loft that clings to the rafters of the servants' hall, a low space where the beams crowd close overhead and your breath hangs in the air like faint smoke. The morning is not yet bright, though a grey shimmer seeps through a gap in the planks, telling you that frost outside has gathered thick upon the roof. The boards creak as you shift on your straw pallet, the rough husks scratching against your skin where the thin blanket has slipped in the night. You lie still for a moment, feeling how the cold presses down on you more firmly than the blanket ever could, the kind of chill that makes every movement slow, as though your bones were carved from ice. You listen to your own exhale, long and steady, and it is the only sound in the loft for now. Around you are the hushed forms of other boys, curled into bundles beneath patched covers, their shapes uneven, like sacks of grain dropped into a corner. One coughs, faint and tired, before turning over, and another lets out a soft snore that blends with the groan of the timbers above. You do not stir them. You know your task comes before theirs, and the weight of duty is as heavy as the frozen air. You shift again, dragging the worn wool edge of your blanket over your shoulders, though it does little to soften the bite of the dawn. Your fingers are stiff as you grope for the garments folded nearby, wool that has grown coarse with years of wear and washing in harsh lye. You do not put them on yet. First, you sit quietly on the pallet, your feet dangling over the edge, bare toes brushing the hard floorboards. The wood feels almost alive with its cold, a sharp jolt that races up your legs. You curl your toes, pull them back, and then lower them again because you must get used to it. The day will not wait, no matter how long you hesitate. You lean forward and rest your elbows on your knees, staring at the dim glow leaking between the cracks in the wall. There is no true sunrise yet, only a promise of it. The frost will glitter when it comes, sharp as a blade, catching light like shards of glass. For now, the loft remains in shadow, and the air is damp with the faint scent of straw and soot, a mixture you know better than any perfume. At last, you gather your clothing. You slide on the woolen undergarments, one leg at a time, tugging the fabric up past knees that ache from yesterday's errands. The wool scratches at your skin, and you shiver even as it clings to you. Then you pull the loose shirt over your head, the collar drooping at one shoulder where the stitching has frayed. You tie the cords at your waist with fingers that still move awkwardly from the cold, tugging the knot until it sits tight. You pull on your stockings, then your shoes, stiff leather with soles already splitting at the edges. They will last another season, or perhaps they will not. It hardly matters, for your steps are small, and the paths you walk are always the same. When you finally stand, your knees crack, though you are young. You walk to the ladder that leads down from the loft, your palm brushing the rung to test the slick of frost that has crept inside even here. You grip tightly and lower yourself, foot by foot, until you reach the stone floor below. The chill doubles here, for the loft at least held the stale warmth of many sleeping bodies. Down here, the stones hold only the memory of winter. You pause, standing barefoot a moment longer to feel how the stone bites. Your shoes are on, but thin, and the cold creeps through them easily. You stand still, arms folded across your chest, listening. The castle around you stirs in the faintest ways. A door sighs open far down the hall, its hinges long ungreased. Somewhere water drips, a slow rhythm against stone. The rafters above complain as they shift, wood straining against cold nails. All the sounds are familiar, ordinary, but in this hour they seem magnified, a chorus of the building itself breathing awake. Your task for the day lies ahead, though it is always the same. You must warm the bed of one who would never know your name, though they would notice, sharply, if their sheets remained cold. That thought sits in your chest, heavy and unmoving, like the stones beneath your feet. You draw a deeper breath and let it out in a long stream, fogging the air in front of you, watching the cloud drift and vanish. Before you begin, you return to the pallet, crouching for a moment to tuck your blanket into a fold. You press your palm against the straw, still faintly warm from where you lay, and you think of how quickly that warmth fades when left alone. You know the same is true of the beds you will touch later. They hold heat only as long as you stay. That is your task, to be the warmth itself. and then to vanish before anyone sees. You straighten and adjust your collar again, feeling the scratch of wool against your neck. You draw your arms closer to your body and walk across the hall, slow steps echoing lightly against the stones. The air feels stiller than it did above, as though the entire castle holds its breath, waiting for the stirrings of its nobility. You are only one of many servants who will rouse the day, but you know your role is among the first. At the door that leads out toward the kitchens, you stop once more and press your hand to the wood. It feels colder than the stone, smooth grain chilled stiff, and it makes your knuckles ache. You leave your hand there longer than necessary, letting the cold spread into your skin until it is difficult to tell where you end and the wood begins. Then, slowly, you draw your hand back, fingers reluctant to move. Your steps carry you farther into the half-light, where shadows stretch long, and the only company is the sound of your own breath. The loft behind you falls silent again, and the day, as always, demands its first service from you. You reach for the small bundle that is always there beside your pallet, the one tied with a frayed cord and smelling faintly of smoke, lye, and the wool's own stubborn oil. You untie it in slow motion so the knot remembers your fingers and loosens without a fight. The fabric inside is warm in the way stale things are warm, from being pressed together for hours, from being known by your hands. A thin linen shirt lies on top, not white by anyone's claim, but the colour of worn bone, with edges rubbed soft where it touches skin and hems rough where someone else's careful needle did not quite meet the cloth's mood. You lift it and let the folds settle over your wrists before guiding your arms through, feeling the cool weave slide along your forearms, feeling every seam like a little road map pressed onto you. The linen sighs as it drapes, and you breathe with it, long in, long out, letting the chill fold itself a little farther away. Over that comes the woolen underlayer the steward calls good enough, and you do not argue because the wool has its own mind. It is sturdy vadmal, thick from the loom, a little warped from many washings in hard water, scratchy as a nettle at the neck but loyal in its heat. You draw it over your head, fight your way through the stubborn collar, and then tug it straight so the weight falls evenly. The sleeves reach your wrists if you coax them. You coax them. The wool drags over the linen, and you feel the two fabrics learn each other again, the way they do every morning. If you hold still for a moment, the fibers warm to your skin, and the itch becomes simply a reminder that you are dressed for work, which is a different kind of comfort than softness, but it does the same job. Your legs get their share next. You pull on the woolen hose, one at a time, easing your toes into the narrow knit so the heels land where heels should land. The cloth grips your calves with a quiet sincerity that leather never manages. You smooth the hose upward, thumbs working along the seam, and then bind them with narrow bands so they do not slouch before breakfast, as everything wishes to do. The underbreeches come after, plain and practical, tied with a cord that you know too well. It knows your hands too, and loops obediently after a brief memory of resistance. You let the cord ends dangle like small declarations that you have done a task properly and do not intend to undo it soon. The jerkin waits folded beneath, heavy with patches that have their own patches, each stitch a small story of other mornings. You shrug into it and feel the weight settle across your shoulders, and you think, as you always do, how a weight can be agreeable when it means you will not shiver quite so quickly. The sides lace with worn points, and you thread them in a steady rhythm, through and across, the motion soothing as a simple song you hum without sound. The laces sit unevenly, they always do. You pull them even enough and let the rest be. This is not a parade, you tell the empty air, which nods back as if it understands. You bend to your shoes again, those stubborn flats with their split at the side, and press your feet into them until the leather sighs around you. The soles have learnt the stones. Your step will feel every ridge anyway. You tie the thongs, then tuck the ends away so they do not catch on a stray nail or a poor thought. If the morning promises ice, you add the wooden patterns later. For now, the air indoors is merely the kind of cold that pretends to be kind while it steals. You pull a narrow wool muffler around your neck, the weave thick where it was darned last month, with thread not quite the same color, and that patch warms you sooner than the rest, as though gratitude carries heat. A cap finishes the business felted wool, low over your ears, smelling faintly of lanolin and elbow grease. You stretch it, release it, and it chooses its place without complaint. Your fingers linger there, pressing the edge for a count of 4, then 5, then 8. A private little ritual whose only purpose is to tell the day that you are ready, even if the day is not yet ready for you. You rub your hands together, not briskly, just enough to remind the blood that movement has begun. The skin on your knuckles is cracked where water and ash have kissed it too often. You trace the tiny lines with your thumb and think how they look like the map of a frozen river, thin branches reaching across the back of your hand. You look down at yourself and see what you always see. Layers upon layers that are not beautiful but are reliable. The shirt that scratches for a moment and then behaves. The hose that hold their shape like good temper. The jerkin that does not ask to be admired, only to be used. You smooth a stubborn crease across your chest and press it flat with the heel of your hand, and then you do it again. Because repetition is a reliable teacher, and also because it gives your hands something to do. There is a tear beginning near the left cuff. You pinch the fray between finger and thumb and whisper a small warning to it that you will not accept more nonsense today. The cuff pretends innocence. You let it keep its secret, for now. There is a neat comfort in the order of dressing that you never find in other parts of the day. The sequence is always the same. The small decisions have already been decided. If you move slowly, nothing squeaks. If you pull evenly, nothing bites. The garments answer to patience. And patience is the one luxury the castle allows you in abundance, provided it does not slow your feet. You breathe and let your shoulders drop, the wool settling closer, the air moving softer along your neck where the muffler meets skin. You reach into the little cloth bag tied to your bundle and take out the bone needle and a twist of thread. Not for a grand repair. Just 2 small darning crosses to snug a thinning place at the right elbow. Stitches so modest they look like punctuation. You sit with your forearm across your knees, the loft's pale light cutting a thin line across your sleeve, and you make the X and then another X, and then you slide the needle back into its bit of cloth. It is not artistry, it is longevity. And that is the sort of skill no one praises out loud. You know the value by the way the cold keeps to the room and not to your skin. When you rise, your clothes make a mild sound, the faint rasp of wool on wool, the soft complaint of leather, the hush of linen. Nothing bright, nothing grand, only the steady, practiced music of getting ready to be useful. You tighten the belt one more hole, not because you need to, but because the habit is its own blanket. You pat each pocket for what it holds. A stub of candle, a scrap of cloth, the wooden spoon that is yours no matter which bowl the day offers. All present, all small, all enough. Finally, you stand in the half-light, layered and laced, and you notice how the room treats you differently now. The air makes less of an argument. The floor, while still honest, feels less like a threat and more like a companion. Your breath still smokes, but it does not press back into you. The dressing is done. The warmth you carry is now a steady promise tucked into fibre and habit. You are not soft, you are prepared. And in this place, that is another way to say comfortable. The day is still waiting, and so is the first bed. You draw one slow breath more. Count to 4, because 4 is simple. And step toward the ladder with your wool saying yes, yes, yes in its dry, practical voice. You make your way toward the hearth as if the stones were a field you know by memory, each ridge a familiar furrow, each crack a narrow ditch you step across without needing to look. The hall sits in a blue half-dark, where benches crouch like patient animals and the longboard keeps last night's crumbs as though they deserve another chance. The hearth is only a darker square inside shadow at first, but the scent tells you it is there, dry ash with a mild sour note, a smear of old smoke in the air, and a trace of last evening's fat that never learned modesty. The smell is not lovely, but it is honest, the kind that says, do the work, and I will answer. You kneel, and let your knees find the softer place in the rushes. The rushes are never truly kind, but compared to the naked stone they pretend. You set down your small bundle, lean the poker where you can catch it blind, and lift the iron bar that sleeps across the grate. Your fingers, split at the knuckles and obedient anyway, test the weight, then nudge it aside. Beneath lies last night's banked heart, a low hill of grey with a red secret somewhere under its crust. You draw a little trench with the poker, just enough to let air remember its duty, and listen to the faintest sigh as the ash settles into new shapes. You shape your mouth and blow a narrow ribbon of breath into the trench. Your breath goes in steady and thin. The ash parts without taking offense. A darker ember glows briefly and thinks about hiding again. You breathe once more, long and even no huffing, no pride, as you were taught in a corner of the kitchen where useful lessons always happen without ceremony. The ember brightens, dims, brightens again, decides you are serious, and shows a rim of orange like a shy eye in a winter hood. You nod to it as if to an acquaintance you meet every morning, which, to be fair, you do. The tinder waits in a wooden box that once held something fancy and has been happier since it began holding practical things. Inside are curled shavings, dry as a secret, a twist of flax that looks spun from the ghost of summer, a ribbon of birch bark rolled tight as a letter that never learned to read. You choose 3 shavings and a bit of bark. You lay the shavings near the ember, not on it. Respect does more work than enthusiasm, then set the bark so the trench can carry a tongue of heat along its pale skin. You give another careful breath. The first shaving wrinkles, darkens, and accepts the invitation. Small fire puts out a hand. You offer it a second, then a third. Soon the little hands hold one another and remember how to climb. You add the smallest kindling, slivers of pine that smell bright even in the cold, 2 finger lengths of spruce that remember wind, and a tooth-thin strip of birch that still keeps a memory of sap beneath its shy skin. You lay them the way you would ease a sleeping child's hand back under a blanket, no sudden gestures, no boasting. The flame reads along the wood as though it were a line of simple words. It gathers sound the first crisp snaps, the faint hiss where a stubborn bead of damp is persuaded to move on. The room answers by letting the shadows step back an inch, very dignified, as if they had meant to all along. The bellows hang on their peg like a tired bird. The leather is cracked in a way that suits it, the kind of cracking that says we have worked and intend to continue. You fit the mouth near the coals and press once. Slow. Air slips in and then out, an old rhythm that never needed a teacher. The coals deepen in color, the red leans toward orange. The orange remembers how to become yellow. You press again. Not eagerly, eagerness scatters ash, and ash dislikes travel. The fire thickens its voice, low at first, then clearer, as if deciding to be helpful. A third modest breath from the bellows, and the flame stands up on its own legs. That is all it ever wanted. A little air, not a speech. You build the heat a little higher, a lattice of thin splits, then one slightly stouter stick across the top like a small bridge. The bridge matters. It keeps the flame from arguing with itself and gives the smoke a thought about leaving. A lazy curl of smoke drifts toward your face and makes your eyes sting for a heartbeat. You blink and accept the tears as another kind of warmth. Around you, the hall begins to remember itself. Grain wakes along the beams. The painted shield above the hearth some ancestors bore with a foolishly proud eye shows its tusk again. The soot-glossed kettle on its hook pretends it wasn't listening, which of course it was. You sit back on your heels and let your hands hover near the newborn heat. It is not much, not yet, only a promise carried on a thin ribbon of air. But promises, when kept, are as good as blankets. The skin of your knuckles loosens a little. The ache in your fingers stops reciting grievances and grows quiet, as if considering better topics. You hold your palms open and slowly turn them, the way flowers turn toward any sun that notices them. You do not crowd the fire. Crowding is for markets, not for mornings. Now you offer the steady wood, the kind that keeps flame walking forward without demanding applause. 2 lengths of spruce from the stack, cut last autumn. Their ends are square and pale, their bark a rough sleeve that leaves a dust of brown on your hands. One piece of birch with a curl of paper-thin skin you fold back out of habit and roll between finger and thumb until it whispers itself to nothing. You set the spruce so the fire can climb it like a ladder and lay the birch across, as if handing the flame a step to rest on. The fire accepts with a polite crackle that sounds very much like gratitude, though you would never put that into words in front of the steward. The smell changes, deepens, rounds, grows a little sweet where the birch warms and offers its quiet sugar to the room. The first wetness of the morning cooks out and goes up the chimney with a modest hiss. Smoke thins from grey to something cleaner. The light at the hearth's mouth turns from cold cream to warm gold. When you lean in, the heat touches not only the fronts of your hands but the sides and wrists, the way comfort spreads when it is sure of itself. You could press closer, claim your wages early, but the hearth has a memory. It keeps a ledger. If you take too much now, it will sulk later. You are on friendly terms with ledgers, you behave. The hall wakes in small ways that are the opposite of a trumpet. A wooden spoon rattles on a shelf because someone in the kitchen has lifted the wrong cloth with the right amount of clumsiness. A draft noses the rushes and rearranges them by a finger's width far inside a cupboard. A mouse tries a bold remark and then thinks better of it. The fire contributes its own conversation, mild cracks, low sighs, the fluent speech of hot wood becoming something else. You listen as you work, not to understand. There is nothing to understand but to keep company with the hour. You take the twig broom and sweep stray ash from the lip of the hearth into a little drift, then into a heap, then into the waiting pan. The ash is fine as flour where the fire burned sure, coarse as ground oats where it hurried. You can see which part belonged to a patient hand last night and which part to someone in the mood to be finished. You do not judge. You sift. You carry the pan to the ash barrel by the door and tip it in. The ash falls with a soft hiss that sounds like agreement. You tap the rim once, because you always do, and set the pan back in its place. Order is a modest heat of its own. By now the flame has a posture. It stands without wobbling, breathes without asking your bellows to think for it. You grant yourself the small luxury of stretching both hands toward the glow until the ache eases down into your wrists. You turn them slowly, back and forth, the way a hinge chooses to move when it refuses drama. Warmth walks up your arms, and your shoulders drop a finger's breadth on their own. You exhale and watch the breath fade faster than it did before. You look into the center where coals are already planning their later lives. The color there is not a single red, but an orchard of oranges and rubies, and a shy violet that visits where the air is thin and right. You try, for no particular reason, to decide whether your breath tastes different to the fire on days when your bread is barley instead of rye. The fire does not answer. Flames are above such conversation. You accept their silence, pick one last modest length of spruce, and lay it where the heart of the heat can take it without fuss. The polite crackle returns, as expected. You rise, brush your knees, and set the iron bar back across the grate the way you found it, only a little straighter, because neatness is another form of warmth. The hearth is awake. The hall feels less like a stone box, and more like a place where a person might stand without thinking only of their feet. You step back twice and give the fire the courtesy of not staring as if it owed you a miracle. It owes you nothing. It will give you light and a fair share of heat because you asked properly. That is enough. You lift your bundle, touch the muffler at your neck to make sure it behaves, and breathe once more. The cloud of breath is thinner now. The morning has crossed a small bridge from night to day, and you have crossed it with it, carrying a pocket of warmth ahead. The first bed waits above, cold and very sure of itself. You go to meet it with hands prepared to be kinder than the linen deserves, which is, after all, the entire point of you. You carry the small wooden dipper from its hook, the one polished smooth by many hands, though not a single one of them noble. Its curve sits in your palm like something carved by time itself, the handle darkened where countless fingers have pressed. You move toward the bucket set near the back wall, a barrel cut short, rim lined with a crust of ice so thin it could almost be glass. The water is waiting, dark and heavy, holding its silence like a secret. You crouch, knees cracking faintly in the cold, and dip the ladle in with slow care. The ice film breaks with a whisper, splitting into a lace of sharp fragments that drift and melt back into their parent. You stir gently, watching little whirlpools circle, as though uncertain of their purpose. Your fingers feel the ache instantly, the air colder now from the water's stubborn gift of chill. A shiver runs up your arms before you can remind yourself that you have done this every day, and will again tomorrow. You draw the ladle up. The water within shivers as well, catching what little light seeps in from the window slit. For a moment, it looks silver, brighter than anything you wear, brighter than the day itself has been willing to offer. You tilt it carefully into the clay jug beside you. The jug is chipped, but it drinks with patience, never spilling except on purpose. You fill it halfway, then lower the ladle again, repeating the small, deliberate act until the jug sighs with fullness. The sound of dripping joins you, not from your hand, though drops cling and fall down your knuckle. It is the roof, surrendering the night's frost where the warmth of your fire has reached. Each drop lands in a rhythm that is neither quick nor slow, a tune you could hum if you ever bothered to hum. You pause to listen. The world makes its own music when you are quiet enough, though few take time to notice. The water in the jug is heavier than it looks. You lift it with both hands, your palms chilled by the cool clay, and balance its weight against your chest. You move with short steps toward the small hearth in the side chamber where pans wait. You are not to drink first. The jug belongs to duties that pretend to be nobler than thirst. But you let one drop touch your lip from a finger you forget to dry, and it tastes of stone, cold and clean, like the inside of the earth. Beside the jug is the smaller pail, also in need of filling. You take the dipper again, repeat the dipping, the breaking, the filling. You know the rhythm without thought. In, lift, pour. In, lift, pour. Each time the dipper cuts the surface, another crack of ice relents. The bucket slowly gives itself to the day, the water rising in the pail until it too is ready for the kitchens, for the washing, for all the places water goes without asking permission. You sit back on your heels, flex your fingers, rub your palms against your hose to chase away the sting. The cold is a persistent visitor it will not leave when asked. It must be bargained with by movement, by patience, by wool that pretends to be thicker than it is. You look at the bucket once more. The water rests still now, its surface smooth and dark again, as though it has forgotten the small storms your hand just made. That is the way of water, quick to stir, quicker still to settle. You let your eyes follow the rim where frost clings in tiny teeth, each one catching the faint morning light. They glitter more honestly than jewels, though no noble would ever say so. You reach out and snap one piece away, a small shard like sugar candy, and hold it against your tongue. It vanishes almost before you can notice, leaving only sharpness, then nothing. That nothing is its gift, and you accept it as you accept most things, without remark. Behind you, in the loft, a cough echoes again, muffled under blankets. A boy stirs but does not rise. The day is not his yet. You stand, lift the jug once more, and carry it to its place. The clay is damp against your sleeve where it pressed, leaving a dark patch that will dry into lighter wool. You do not bother to brush it. It belongs to you now, as much as any garment does. The act is small, simple, nearly invisible, yet without it the hearth would have no companion, the chamber no steam for linen, the mouths no cup for broth. You think on this sometimes, though never for long. Thinking does not change the water, carrying does. When the jug is set, you turn back toward the bucket. A skin of new frost is already forming across the surface, thinner than before, delicate as a thought half remembered. You smile to yourself, not out of joy but out of recognition. The water does what it always does, and so do you. Both of you repeat, and repeat, and repeat again, until repetition itself is the shape of life. The castle has its own way of waking. You hear it now as you move slowly along the corridor, each step small, each breath visible in the grey half-light. The walls are thick, but they are not silent. They shift, they groan, they remember. A beam pops with the sound of a finger's knuckle cracking, sharp and brief. Somewhere above, a shutter thuds as the frost loosens its grip. A door complains faintly on its hinge, swinging in a draught that smells of smoke and damp wool. None of these things surprise you. The castle is alive in the morning, not with voices yet, but with the noises of itself deciding whether it will endure another day. You pause at a corner, where the stones are uneven and worn by more footsteps than you can ever count. The corridor here is narrow, walls close on either side, and the cold lingers thicker where the sun never enters. Your hand brushes the surface as you pass stone polished, not by intention but by centuries of sleeves and palms, a kind of smoothness no mason ever planned. The chill of it runs through your fingers, stronger than any wool you wear. You draw back, then touch it again, because sometimes you need to remind yourself how sharp the cold really is. The air is still heavy with night, though somewhere kitchens have begun their slow quarrel with darkness. A faint clatter reaches you, muffled and distant, iron against wood. Perhaps the first ladle dropped carelessly on a table. You hear the faintest murmur of voices too. Servants arguing in the soft way of those who are not yet fully awake, words blurred together like the hum of bees in a cold hive. You cannot make out the sense, and you do not try. The sound alone tells you that the day is crawling out of its bed, as you have crawled out of yours. Your shoes scuff lightly on the flags. The sound is small, almost shy. The walls answer with echoes that double each step, so it seems another pair of feet follows you, though no one does. You keep your pace steady, neither hurried nor slow. If you move too quickly, the echoes rise in pitch, as though mocking. If you dawdle, they fade into nothing, and you are left with only your own breathing for company. You prefer the middle, where both sound and silence keep you steady. A gust drifts along the corridor from some unseen crack, a sharp breath that tugs at your muffler and slides down the back of your neck. It smells of wood smoke and of stone that has known too many winters. You close your eyes for a moment, letting it pass through you, then open them again to see your breath trailing faintly ahead. You follow it as though it were leading you somewhere, though in truth you know exactly where you are going. The corridor bends and widens near the chamber doors. Heavy oak slabs rise out of the stone like parts of a tree still rooted in the earth. Iron bands stretch across them, black with age, hammered long before you were born. Each door stands still for now, but you know behind them lie rooms full of silence, and in those silences nobles sleep with the certainty that someone else manages the cold for them. You move past quietly, not disturbing wood or iron, only glancing at the carvings where hands more skilled than yours etched vines, beasts, and strange curling letters you cannot read. A tapestry droops along one wall, its colours faded but still proud enough to show a battle where men ride horses too large and hold swords too long. The wool smells faintly of dust and age. You brush it with the back of your hand as you pass, just enough to feel the threads rough under your skin. For a moment you wonder how many winters it has hung here, catching draughts, hiding cracks, pretending to be warmth. Then you keep walking, for the corridor does not pause simply because you do. From above you hear a groan in the rafters, followed by the faint scattering patter of something small snow shaken loose by the shift of timber, sliding down the outer wall. It falls silent quickly, but the image remains with you. White crystals clinging to the stone, melting slowly in the shy morning light. You breathe deeper, feeling the air sting in your chest, sharper now, as though it too has woken. The noises continue, the scrape of a stool across the kitchen floor, far below, the rattle of a pail set down on stone, the clink of keys at a steward's belt as he makes his rounds. All of it faint, all of it half muted by walls that prefer secrecy. Yet together they weave a fabric of morning that is as steady as any blanket. The castle does not leap awake. It creeps, stretches, finds its footing one creak at a time. You let your steps join that fabric. Each movement is part of the chorus now. The shuffle of your shoes, the whisper of your sleeve against stone, the soft puff of your breath. You do not announce yourself. You do not need to. The castle knows you are here. It has always known. And so you keep moving, guided less by sight than by the familiar sound of your own presence folding into the greater noise of a house that is never truly silent, even in its sleep. The pan of ashes waits where you left it, soft grey heaped like flour on a table, edges crumbling with the slightest movement. You lift the pan in both hands, careful to keep it balanced, for the dust is quick to take flight and cling to your sleeves. Its weight is not heavy, not like water or wood, but it shifts easily, like thoughts that refuse to stay still. You move toward the side door that opens into a narrow yard, where ash can be poured out into a wooden tub set for that purpose. The latch clicks faintly as you ease it open, and the air beyond greets you at once, sharp and clean, carrying the taste of frost. You step out. The yard is half hidden in shadow, walls on three sides holding in the cold like a cup. Frost glitters on the ground in tiny points, each crystal catching what little dawnlight there is. Your shoes crunch softly on the layer, the sound brittle and crisp, as though you were walking across a shallow dish of sugar. You pause, enjoying the sound for a moment longer than you should, then continue to the tub. The tub is wide and cracked, iron hoops rusted, but it holds its purpose, a resting place for the castle's leavings. You tilt the pan slowly, letting the ash pour out in a steady stream. It falls without sound, only a faint hiss as the cold air licks the warmer dust. The pile within the tub swells, a soft hill with faint smoke still rising from some stubborn ember buried within. You watch the smoke curl upward and vanish into the still air. Nothing stirs it, no breeze dares to move here yet. The tub is already more than half full, the grey mounded and ridged, a strange landscape in miniature. You smooth the top with the edge of your pan before setting it aside. Your breath fogs before your face as you lean against the wall for a moment. The stone is colder than the air, and it presses through your jerkin, reminding you not to linger. But you do linger, just long enough to hear the quiet of the yard itself. Somewhere a crow calls, flat and unhurried. A dog barks from the distant village, muffled by the walls. Inside, beyond the door, the faintest stir of footsteps echoes in the passage. The castle is still half asleep, but less so than a few minutes before. You return the empty pan to its place. A little dust clings to your cuffs, pale grey against the dark wool. You brush at it once, though it leaves a smear darker than before. You let it be. The ash belongs to the day now, and your sleeve can carry a trace of it without shame. You take the small broom and sweep the hearth's lip where the ash had spilled, pushing it into a neat line, then a smaller heap, then finally into the pan again. Each stroke of the broom is quiet, steady, almost soothing. The bristles scratch the stone, but the sound is gentle, like a whisper no one cares to hear. The work is simple, repeated every day, yet it always carries its own satisfaction. The hearth cannot be tended without respect for its ashes. They are the memory of warmth, the proof of fire, the silent witness of yesterday's comfort. You handle them as such, not as waste, but as record. When they are gone, the hearth looks clean again, ready to tell a new story in flame and smoke. You step back, tilt your head, and approve the emptiness you have made. Your hands are dry now, dusted with powder, the cracks along your knuckles filled pale. You rub them together, letting the ash work its way into your skin. It feels rough, grainy, and it stings a little where the cold has already bitten. You flex your fingers, stretch them until they pop softly, then fold them again. There is no balm for them here, no ointment, only the steady rhythm of use and wear. And yet, in their roughness, they are tools as reliable as the poker or the broom. You straighten the broom against the wall, align the pan beside it, and make sure the latch on the door sits closed. The morning's first task is done, and the hearth no longer looks like a graveyard. Instead, it looks like a beginning, and beginnings are always quieter than endings. You breathe once, long and slow, and watch the last tendrils of smoke fade into the beams above. The castle seems to sigh with you, its timbers relaxing in the mild warmth now building. Soon the nobles will stir, calling for their comforts, as though the world had not worked 2 hours already to prepare them. But for now, Only you know the feel of ashes under your hands, the sound of frost under your shoes, the smell of smoke that lingers just long enough to remind you that yesterday had its fire, and today will have another. You move back into the dim corridor, leaving behind the quiet ash barrel and the faint smoke that still clings to your sleeves. The passage is long and narrow, stone pressing close on either side, the air colder here than in the yard, because it never sees the sun. Your shoes scuff lightly along the flags, each step echoing against the walls, though the sound is dull, muffled as if swallowed by centuries of dust. You know the way by heart, your feet have learnt the count of each slab, the uneven dips, the patches that stay damp no matter the season. Here, where the corridor bends, the noble chambers begin. Carved oak doors line the walls, tall, heavy, with iron hinges darkened by time and oil. The doors stand shut now, firm and dignified, though within them lie the feather beds that will soon call for your warmth. The silence here is heavier, deliberate, as though the stones themselves are holding their breath in respect for the sleepers inside. You slow your steps, not wishing to break that silence more than you must. Your hand trails along the wall as you walk. The stone is colder than your palm, rough in some places, polished smooth in others where shoulders, elbows and hands have passed for generations. You touch it lightly, not as comfort, but as balance. The way a man touches a staff he does not carry. Each ridge tells you where you are without needing sight. Each curve is a familiar companion. The wall is unyielding, but steady better company than the empty air. Faint sounds seep through the doors if you listen. A low cough from one chamber, muffled by quilts, the restless shift of a sleeper turning, the creak of a bed frame, wood straining under idle movement. You hear it all, though you pretend not to. It is not your place to know how nobles sleep. You are here only to serve the space before they wake. Still, your ears cannot help but catch the fragments, and the castle seems more alive because of them. A draught stirs as you pass a narrow slit of a window, high above head height, open only to the pale winter sky. Cold air slips through it like a knife, trailing down the wall and across your cheek. You draw your muffler closer, pressing the wool to your chin. Outside, the day is rising, though the light is still weak, a pale wash against stone that prefers shadow. You glimpse a flurry of frost blowing past the slit, glittering briefly before vanishing. For a moment, you think of the world beyond the walls, roofs glazed in white, branches bent under ice, fields silent beneath snow. Then you walk on. You come to the door of the Baron's son, the chamber where your task will begin. The door is carved with vines curling around a shield, the details softened by years of polishing. The iron latch is cold against your palm as you test it gently. You do not open yet. First, you pause, listening. No sound comes from within, no cough, no turn of linen, only the deep quiet of a boy still sleeping in the confidence that his bed will not be cold when he wakes. That quiet is your invitation. You glance once down the corridor. No steward walks here yet. No other servant hurries past. It is just you, the doors, the stone, the breath in your chest. You draw in that breath slowly, let it out slower still, and rest your hand fully on the latch. The iron stings, cold pressing through your skin, but you do not flinch. You lean your shoulder slightly into the wood, not enough to move it, only enough to feel the mass of the chamber waiting beyond. Then, carefully, you let the latch lift. The sound is small, a faint click swallowed instantly by the thick air. You push, and the door shifts open with the barest creak, wood sighing against stone. Darkness spills out first, cool and heavy, followed by the faintest trace of scent, lavender, smoke, and wool. You stand on the threshold a moment, letting the air wash over you. It feels different here, as though the space itself demands a slower breath, a quieter step. Your eyes adjust, though there is little to see. The room holds its secrets in shadow, only the pale shape of a window hinted at beyond the bed, where frost has drawn its flowers on the glass. The bed itself looms large, carved posts reaching upward, quilts layered high. Somewhere within lies the noble youth, his dreams undisturbed. And somewhere at the edge of those quilts is the place meant for you, where the sheets are cold, waiting for warmth that is not his to provide. You close the door softly behind you, the latch seating itself with a dull click. The room accepts you now, though it does not welcome you. You know your role: to move quietly, to leave no trace, to touch the linens in a way that leaves only comfort behind. The corridor fades away, its drafts and echoes sealed off. All that remains is this chamber, its silence, its cold, and the task that lies ahead. You begin at the place where the door meets the wall, where the seam is shallow, and your fingers can settle, as if into a small ditch no broom will ever empty. The stone is cold in a way that does not shout, it simply refuses you, and by refusing, steadies you. You let your palm rest there, until the dark feels a fraction less crowded. The room holds its breath. Your wool whispers. Your eyes learn outlines very slowly: bedposts, a table, the paler square of a window, but you trust your hand more than your sight. Your hand has never exaggerated. You move with small steps, and keep your shoulder brushed lightly to the wall. The stone's face changes beneath your touch every span or two. One block wears a scatter of pocks, a busy little field of tiny holes that prickle under your fingertips. Another is smoothed like a river pebble where a hanging once covered it for years. The cloth's slow sway polishing the surface a finger width at a time. Between stones, the mortar line rises and falls, sandy in one place, hard and glassy in the next, as if the wall cannot decide whether to be grain or bone. Your thumb catches a crumb of lime. It leaves a pale stripe when you wipe it against your jerkin. You do not look at the mark. It will join the others, and no one will blame dust for being itself. Underfoot, the flags keep their own quiet map. There is the shallow hollow near the foot of the bed where servants' paths have curved for longer than your years. There is the narrow crack that pretends to be a step, if you are careless. Your shoes skim, weight easy at the knees the way you have learned to cross ice that looks thin and usually is. The floor answers with the softest leather sound, a breath more than a tread, the kind of sound that will not persuade a sleeper to notice it. Your palm slides along a chill corner and finds iron a ring set into the stone, blunt as a knuckle. Once it held a curtain, tonight it holds only cold. You touch it because you always do, as if to confirm that the room is the room you know, and not some new arrangement conjured by darkness. The iron is sharper than the stone, and makes your skin remember itself. Past it, the chisel marks begin shallow, slanted, a set of fine grooves where the mason's tool once chewed, and then grew tired. You trace 2 inches of that old appetite with a single fingertip, more a nod than a caress, and move on. You pause and listen, because listening makes walls friendlier. The sleeper, buried under quilts, breathes in a long, even measure, a rhythm with enough space in it for you to fit your own breath beside his without collision. Between those breaths, the rope lacing under the mattress murmurs, a slow little music of strained fibre that insists it is comfortable. Far away, a shutter somewhere in the house taps, thinks better of the idea, and holds still. The window whispers crisp nothings as frost pulls away from glass, grain by grain. The room smells faintly of old lavender and of wool that never learned modesty. If there is also a breath of smoke, it is very polite about it. A pocket in the mortar meets your thumb, a thumb's depth and no deeper, a small cave where pebbles have collected like patient beads. You roll one between finger and thumb because that is what a person does when a small round thing presents itself to be considered. It clicks against your nail, very soft. You put it back exactly where you found it, because leaving the world nearly as you met it is the quietest kind of pride. You reach the foot of the bed and let your palm leave stone for wood. The carved post is warm by comparison, its grain soft with age and polishing by hands that have tied and untied bed curtains 1,000 times. Your fingers find the narrow gutter where the curtain cord nests. The cord itself sits nearby, braided and dense, smelling faintly of grease. It yields under your touch, and then remembers its stubbornness. You do not tug. You are not here to rearrange dignity. You are here to persuade linen not to behave like ice. You return to the wall. A tapestry's edge grazes your knuckles, woolly, and a little oily, some stitched triumph of horses and banners. That in this dark is only ridges and valleys. You slide your hand beneath its hem and meet colder stone again. The air behind the hanging has the old breath of a pocket that does not circulate. Once mice tried to make meaning there. The cats gave them an education. A faded strand brushes your wrist like a cautious reed by winter water. You leave it still and keep moving. The small table that keeps to the wall finds your hip, and your hand steadies a corner that wobbles out of habit. On the tabletop live shapes you know by their manners, the round lip of a pewter dish that remembers soap, the folded square of linen that never grows less stiff no matter how often it is folded, a comb whose worn teeth offer more comfort than order. You do not disturb any of it. Your work is warmth, not redecoration, and the steward's eyebrows have always been colder than stone. You count spaces the way you always do, table to chest, chest to footpost, footpost to the board that squeaks if you let your heel fall flat. You ease your weight to the outer edge of your foot, and the board, satisfied by the courtesy, keeps its complaint to a murmur. Posture, you have discovered, is a language. The room understands it better than words. Closer to the window, the wall cools further, as if night has gathered itself in this corner to wait for evening's return. Frost on the other side invents leaves and ferns you will not see again until the season remembers generosity. You feel those imagined shapes translated into geometry under your palm, not leaf, not fern, but something that believes in them. The air tastes faintly of iron here, a metallic thinness you do not bother to name. Giving names to air never made it warmer. Before you leave the wall, you lay your whole palm flat and let the stone drink whatever hurry still clings to you. It is good at that. Stone so much better at taking away than at giving, and yet the taking is its gift. Your shoulders settle, your jaw loosens, your breath lengthens to match the sleeper's. Not because you admire him particularly, but because two steady rhythms make less noise than one lonely one. The room agrees with you in its own way. Nothing creaks, nothing argues. When you lift your hand at last, your skin tingles with pins that cannot decide whether to be pain or relief. You flex, and the feeling moves like a small flock down your fingers and out through the nails. You let it go. 2 more steps put your knees almost against the bed's edge. The linen waits within, crisp and humorless. The quilt above it holds a calm hill of cold that is, by all accounts, not your business to resent. Your hand returns to the wall for one last touch, a quiet acknowledgement, a simple thank you to the thing that has held you upright without once offering comfort. You stand there a breath longer, counting 4 and then another 4, letting the stillness thicken around you until even your thoughts remember to speak softly. Balance settled, you shift your weight so the bed will take you when you slide beneath the covers, not as a surprise but as a continuation. The stone no longer asks anything of you. It has done its part. You have done yours, to move the way cold rooms prefer, with care so small it looks like stillness. The rest of the task is linen and patience. You let your palm fall to your side, and the wall, unimpressed, returns to being a wall. The bed looms in front of you like a wooden ship pulled up on dry land, its posts rising tall, its frame thick, its carved edges softened by the passing of time and dusting of many hands. You stand at the edge, your breath slow, eyes adjusting to the pale outline of sheets folded under heavy quilts. The chamber is still, the only sound the deep, steady rhythm of the Baron's son, asleep somewhere within the mound of feather and wool. You are not here to wake him. You are here for the part of the bed he will never think about, the cold side that greets him, as though it were warm all along. You slide your hand along the quilt's edge. The fabric is taut, heavy, filled with feathers that rustle faintly when touched. They sound dry, papery, yet rich, like sacks of grain being shifted in a storeroom. You grip the edge and lift carefully. The cover rises reluctantly, dragging its weight as if it were offended to move. You slip your body sideways, easing into the hollow you know is left vacant for you. The cold takes you instantly, seeping up through linen sheets that are damp with frost and neglect. You flinch inward, though you keep still outwardly, for the sleeper must never stir because of you. The linen is sharp against your skin. It holds the night's breath. each thread a thin icicle that melts slowly under your weight. You lie flat, spine pressed against mattress ropes that creak softly in protest. The feathers beneath shift with a sigh, enclosing you in their chill before they consider the warmth you bring. The quilt settles back above, its heavy weight pinning you gently, leaving you between cold below and cold above, yourself the single furnace in the middle. You breathe long and slow. Your breath clouds in front of your face, but soon the cloud lessens, absorbed into the pocket of air beneath the quilt. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to make the darkness simpler. The sheets press against your arms and legs like water that does not flow, waiting for your heat to trickle into them. Each exhale loosens them, each inhale draws the cold tighter again, a quiet tug of war that neither wins but both accept. The smell rises as the linen warms. It is faint, but there. The ghost of lye soap, sharp and dry, not from yesterday but from weeks past. Beneath it you catch the softer trace of lavender, pressed into sachets long ago and now only whispering at the corners. And deeper still, you smell the wood smoke that seeps into every cloth in the castle, no matter how fine. Together, the scents mix into something familiar. The smell of a bed not your own, the smell of labor you perform but never share. The first warmth spreads slowly, stubborn as a reluctant guest. It begins where your chest meets the sheet, then down along your arms, into your fingers, into your thighs. The linen softens, loosens, yields, the damp frost between fibers lifts in tiny breaths, vanishing into the air above you. You know the moment it happens because the sheet stops biting and begins to hold. That moment is your work, though no one will ever thank you for it. You shift slightly, rolling one shoulder deeper into the mattress, then the other. Each movement presses more warmth outward, driving it into corners of the bed that would otherwise stay stiff and unwelcoming. You press your legs out, toes brushing the far end, forcing the chill there to retreat. The ropes creak again, low and rhythmic, almost as if they approve. You do not push too far. You have learned to move just enough, no more. A wrinkle too deep, a quilt too shifted, would betray you when the noble wakes. Your skill lies in leaving no sign but warmth itself. You open your eyes to the faint glimmer of frost on the window, just visible from your angle. The glass is small, uneven, its surface painted by winter into leaves and ferns more delicate than any embroidery. The patterns glisten faintly in the grey light, as though the room has grown its own secret garden. You lie still, watching, letting the sight join the sensation of fabric softening beneath you. The frost outside, the warmth inside, both equally patient, both equally silent. You let your breath fall into the rhythm of the sleeper nearby, long, steady, unbroken. You do not listen to him with envy or with scorn. You simply share the air, each of you taking your place as though the world had arranged it long ago. He sleeps in ignorance of you. You work in quiet disregard of him. Together, the arrangement functions, and the bed is ready to greet him when his eyes open. That is enough. Time slips strangely here, under the quilt, pressed between sheets that slowly change character. Minutes feel like hours, hours like minutes. You cannot measure them, only the spreading of warmth itself. When the cold no longer feels like sharp needles, when the linen no longer startles your skin, you know your work is doing what it must. You stay longer still, because warmth must be more than a trace, it must be certain. You close your eyes again, not for rest, but for stillness. Your body gives what it can, and the sheets drink it greedily. You are the boy who warms the bed. The quilt accepts you as a secret, the mattress holds you without name, the chamber remains unaware. You are here only to leave no sign. The chamber remains hushed, still heavy with the weight of sleep, as you let your eyes adjust to the great shape of the bed carved in dark oak. Its posts are thick, each one cut with spirals that vanish into shadow, reaching upward toward the canopy that looms like a lid. The headboard carries a shield and curling leaves, though in this grey light they are only ridges and valleys your eyes slide over without detail. The quilt lies across it all, like a snowdrift, heavy, unmoving, settled. You slide your hand to the edge again, fingers gripping linen that still holds its memory of cold. With the slowest care, you ease yourself farther under the cover. The feather mattress sighs beneath your weight, creaking softly at its ropes, adjusting as though surprised. The smell of it rises. Wool, dust, faint lavender, the dry scent of feathers long kept in linen sacks before they were sewn into comfort. You press your shoulder deeper into the hollow, allowing your body to sink into the great soft mound that swallows you without kindness. The air beneath the quilt is close, stale from the night. It presses to your face like a damp cloth. You breathe through it, slow and steady, until the warmth you offer begins to push back. Each breath you exhale softens the air, erasing its sharpness. And the linen that moments ago bit against your skin now feels only firm, waiting, as if it trusts you to do your work. You listen. At the far side of the bed, muffled in the heavy pile of bedding, the Baron's sun shifts faintly. It is not a restless movement, more like the dreamer rolling deeper into comfort. The ropes of the bed complain briefly, then fall quiet again. His breath remains slow, deep, unbroken. You keep your own breath matched to his, not in admiration but in practicality, because the rhythm hides yours within it. Two sounds are harder to notice than one. You turn slowly onto your side. The sheet beneath is crisp, thick, holding the damp of cold in its fibers. Your body presses warmth into it like water soaking into earth, spreading outward with invisible roots. You move a leg across, letting your knee and shin press against the unclaimed half. At first, the shock of frost stabs back at you, sharp and unwelcoming, but you stay, you press, you wait. The linen grudges at first, then loosens, then accepts. You feel it happen, the change from refusal to allowance. That is your measure of progress. Your hand stretches out across the fabric. The embroidery along the hem meets your fingertips. Small stitched flowers, curling vines, the careful work of some seamstress whose name will not be remembered. You trace them slowly, one petal at a time, feeling the tiny rises of thread beneath the pad of your finger. They are beautiful in a quiet way, and invisible in this darkness. No noble child will notice them when he sleeps, yet here they are, stitched with care. You press your fingers against them gently, as though acknowledging the effort of another unseen hand, not so different from yours. Above you, the quilt shifts faintly with the weight of feathers. Its heaviness pins you to the mattress, wrapping you into the work as surely as ropes bind cargo. There is a peculiar comfort in that heaviness. It denies fidgeting, demands stillness. You yield to it, and in yielding, your warmth gathers faster, trapped between body and cover. The cold retreats inch by inch, pushed aside by the pressure of your presence. The smell grows stronger the longer you lie. Lavender lingers faintly at the pillow's edge, dried long ago but still clinging, a ghost of summer pressed into fabric. Beneath it, the sharper note of soap lye, burned into the threads by endless washings. And below that, the deeper scent of wool and feather, musty but honest, a smell of years lived through winters that would not forgive less sturdy materials. You breathe them all, one after the other, until they blend into something steady and dull, something you can sleep in, though you are not meant to sleep. You close your eyes once more. The sheets beneath are softening now, not merely where you lie, but a hand's breadth farther, then two hands, then a whole stretch along your torso. The frost has lifted, the damp receded, the linen no longer stiff but pliant. You imagine how it will feel when the noble slips into it later, believing it has always been this way. He will never notice the difference between linen left cold and linen already tamed. He will only think, the bed is as it should be. That thought is your work, invisible and complete. You stay because the work is not finished at the first sign of softness. Warmth must spread evenly, convincingly, without gaps. You roll once more gently onto your other side, pressing the fabric there as well. The ropes beneath sigh again, the feathers adjust, the quilt resettles. The cold is sharper here at first, but less so than when you began. You stay until it loosens too, until it feels the same as the rest. When you open your eyes, the frost on the window has grown brighter with dawn. Light is seeping into the chamber at last, pale and weak, but enough to show faint outlines. The bedpost rising dark, the table waiting still. the silver rim of frost across the glass. The world outside is waking, but in here time is slower, measured not by bells or sun, but by the slow surrender of cold linen to borrowed warmth. You lie still, patient, breathing quietly, feeling the bed become ready for someone who will never know you were here. That is the shape of your work, to erase yourself completely, leaving only comfort in your place. You make the next move the way you always do, with patience taught by cold linens and heavier quilts, no jolts, no bravado, only the kind of careful climbing that leaves the bed believing it welcomed you of its own idea. Your palm finds the quilt's edge. Your fingers hook the hem. You draw a slow breath and let your weight tip inward, not as a fall, but as a tide, a quiet swelling that lifts and settles without a single sharp corner. The feather mattress breathes under you, a low hush, and you pause to let it be surprised in peace. You keep one knee outside the covers a breath longer, bracing against the bed frame so your entry makes a slope, not a hole. Holes tell stories, slopes keep secrets. Your other knee joins, gentled through linen that feels at first like it has not forgiven the night. You let your shins slide, fabric against wool, the sound barely a murmur. The rope lacing beneath the old grid that keeps the feathers from deciding to become a coastline answers with a mild complaint, then remembers its duty and holds. You angle your hips so your weight spreads wide rather than deep. The mattress appreciates diplomacy, where a clumsy body would punch down until the feathers sulked in one corner and a ridge rose in protest along the far side. You seep instead, an orderly flood. Your shoulders follow, one and then the other, a sequence that keeps the quilt's surface flat. Above you, the canopy looms like a cloud carved from wood. You glance up, though you cannot see its carvings, only their patient darkness. The feathers themselves are a peculiar nation, light, stubborn, easily rearranged, fond of their own opinions. At first they gather away from your warmth, as if making room for it, and in making room they leave you pressed to the linen as to cold stone. It is an illusion they relish. You answer with stillness. When you deny them drama, they lose interest in performing and begin their more useful work, lifting a little here, tucking a little there, settling into the shape of someone who intends to do no harm. Your elbows do not stab, they rest. Your hands do not pry, they listen. The sheet between your palms is tight, drawn, proud of its flatness. Pride can be softened. You lay the heel of your hand, not the point of your knuckles, and speak in pressure the sheet understands. There will be warmth, and there will be order, and neither will be rushed. The answer comes slowly, the twang of a rope, loosening half a whisper. The tiniest sigh of feathers making peace with gravity and with you. You draw 1 foot farther down, toes reaching for the bed's lower board where chill gathers like thoughts at dawn, plenty of them, none helpful. The linen bites there first, as it always does, a narrow ring of cold that clings to ankles like a mean rumour. You do not retreat. You press the line of heat from your calf through your heel into that space. Hold, breathe, and hold again. The bite dulls. The rumour loses interest. Warmth travels the span of cloth like sap in a slow spring. You keep a measured distance from the sleeper's side, not for reverence, but for precision. If your warmth mingles with his, the bed may remember both of you too clearly, and leave a wake in the middle that the steward's eye will read as negligence. You stay to the appointed province this half, your half, and make it seem inevitable that the other half will feel the same when he rolls into it. That is the trick. To prepare a future you will not see. Your cheek grazes the pillow edge, and the pillow, fancy as it may be, has the same truth as any sack stuffing shifts to the deeper presence. You do not lay your head, you lean it long enough to know where the stitching begins. The embroidery here is tighter than at the hem, the thread more eager to show off when daylight comes. Your finger traces a spray of leaves. The leaves, if asked, would tell you nothing about trees. They only know about needles and tie. You accept their ignorance and their company. The curtain cord hangs near the post, a braided thing with the memory of hundreds of hands. You leave it untouched. Any new angle will be an accusation later, but you let your gaze rest at the curtain's lower edge, where drafts sneak in. Cool air makes a gentle river along the floor. It climbs the bedstead like ivy, then loses interest at the quilt. Your warmth must be quicker than that river, but it does not have to be loud. You give the blanket the mildest lift with your shoulder, so the air you have spent yourself warming can spread without escaping. The lift is the size of a thought. The quilt answers with a small, resettling thud that no one will hear, not even you in a minute. The mattress ropes speak again, tiny notes at the edge of hearing, a lattice learning your story. Not heavy, not light, insistent in exactly the way work is. You let the sound pass through your bones and out the soles of your feet into wood. Nothing squeaks. This is an achievement in a house that collects squeaks the way bees collect summer. You check the surface. Not with eyes they lie in this light, but with skin. The sheet along your ribs no longer stings. The line across your thighs no longer grabs at wool. The far corner at your knee admits that cold was never truly its identity, only its habit. You move the smallest distance to carry that admission onward, a palm width at a time, like passing a bowl among quiet friends. You stop before the bowl is empty. You always stop before perfect, because perfect leaves a signature. Competence leaves none. You count a slow 4 in and a slower 6 out, the numbers folding into the steady drag of feathers and the muted drum of your pulse against linen. The world shrinks to the size of your task, the radius of your heat, the softness of the sheet now becoming itself, the exact angle of your ankle that keeps the lower quadrant from remembering ice. If a thought arrives about anything larger, fields snow-blind and roof lines glittering, you let it pass like smoke, noticed and soon gone. There is, inevitably, the lone feather quill that announces itself through the cloth with a single precise poke, as if to remind you that comfort is granted, not owed. You mark its point with 2 fingers, press and twist a fraction, and the quill changes its mind about ambition. Even feathers can be reasonable when addressed in their own language. You make one last adjustment, a careful slide of your hip, so the shallow you have made becomes a long, patient valley, not a pit. Valleys invite travelers, pits trap them. The noble will never know the difference, but his back will. You smooth the near edge of the sheet with the flat of 2 fingers, following the grain of linen rather than arguing across it. Threads like to be agreed with. They thank you by lying quiet. When you are sure the mattress holds an even story under you, you grow still in the fullest sense, not frozen, not posed, simply done with the part that needs motion. Heat does what heat does when left to its business. It is a slow partner, but faithful. You let your shoulders settle under the quilt's consenting weight. You notice your breath has lengthened without your asking. Somewhere in the other half of the bedding a sleeper turns a fraction. The rope grid gives a single contented murmur, and quiet wraps itself back around the room like a shawl reclaimed. Climbing, you have discovered, is not always up. Sometimes it is the gradual descent into a space that at first refuses you and then keeps you as if you had always been there. You are there now, not as a presence that demands remark, but as a warmth that erases the need for one. The bed holds, the feathers hold, you hold, and in that soft conspiracy, the morning moves forward without noticing you at all, which is exactly what you came for. You lie still, letting your breath slide out in long streams, feeling how each exhale warms the narrow air trapped beneath the quilt. Slowly, slowly, the sheet beneath your chest loosens its bite. At first it felt like pressed glass, brittle and sharp, but now it yields in small degrees, as though your skin were teaching it patience. You press your palms flat, spreading warmth outward, as if smoothing dough across a board. The linen remembers, thread by thread, what it is to be pliant. You turn your head slightly, cheek brushing against the cloth. The fabric carries a faint, dry scent, soap boiled in lye, used and rinsed until it has no sharpness left, only the pale ghost of clean. Beneath that you catch lavender, so faint it might only be a memory, pressed in sachets and tucked at corners by hands more delicate than yours. Deeper still lies the smell of the wood smoke that winds its way into every garment and bedclothes in the castle, no matter their rank. Together, these scents make the air under the quilt familiar, dull, persistent, almost comforting in their sameness. You let your arms slide outward along the sheet, wrist and fingers pressing the cold away in their slow sweep. The fabric wrinkles faintly under the pressure, then settles, softer. You draw your legs out farther, toes searching the distant end of the bed. The linen there still clings to the frost of night, sharp at the edges like broken porcelain. You push your calves against it, steady, until the cold relents, until the fabric sighs and loosens just enough. It always does, though it never admits it kindly. The air beneath the quilt thickens with each breath. Your exhalation clouds at first, visible in the faint light, then it disappears, absorbed into the pocket you are making livable. You listen to it, the sound of your breath blending with the low creak of the bed ropes and the muffled rustle of feathers below. The noises are faint, half sounds, the kind you could almost miss if you let your mind wander. Yet together they make a music of work, a rhythm as steady as any chant. The sleeper beside you does not stir. His breath is long, heavy, unbroken, as though the very bed itself had claimed him for its own. You keep your breath close to his rhythm, not quite matching, but near enough that the room does not hear two separate voices. In such quiet, rhythm is a disguise, and you wear it without thought. The sheets begin to carry your shape. Where once they were hard and unyielding, now they hold the hollow of your shoulder, the slope of your hip, the faint press of your shin. These impressions are temporary, fleeting, soon to be overwritten. But for now, they are signs that the work is happening, that the cold is leaving its post. You press more firmly for a moment with your hand, then withdraw, leaving behind a faint warmth that will stay a little longer than your fingers do. Your eyelids grow heavy for a moment, though you do not mean to sleep. The steadiness of the bed, the quiet of the chamber, the weight of the quilt, all conspire toward drowsiness. But you remind yourself, with a slow blink and a measured breath, that your task is to stay. To drift would risk too deep an imprint, too rumpled a cover, too obvious a trace. You let yourself hover at the edge of rest, never crossing fully, a balance you have learnt through many mornings. The frost on the window glimmers faintly. Its edges catch the weak dawn, sparkling like salt scattered across glass. You watch the light shift, a pale wash moving in slow increments as the sky grows a shade brighter. The chamber remains mostly shadow, the quilt above you cutting the light into pieces. But those tiny sparkles give you something to look at, a proof that time is moving even if you remain still. When you turn your hand once more, palm brushing across the embroidered hem, you feel the raised threads, flowers stitched with care. You trace them slowly, not to admire, but simply to occupy your fingers while your warmth seeps deeper. Each stitch is small, deliberate, anonymous. They are like your work, quiet, necessary, and destined to go unseen. You let your fingertip pause at one tiny knot, then move on. The sheet now feels different under your body. Where it once resisted, it now yields. Where it once shocked, it now agrees. You know the difference, as clearly as the difference between silence and music. Your warmth has traveled, stretching out into corners you cannot reach with your hand or foot, proving itself in the way the linen rests soft instead of stiff. You remain still, letting the warmth deepen further. This is not a task to be hurried. It is not finished until the cold is forgotten completely, until the sheet feels as though it never held frost at all. You wait, you breathe. You let the bed become what it must be for the one who will never wonder how it came to be so. You draw another slow breath and let it drift out, watching the faint curl of mist dissolve in the dim air beneath the quilt. The linens have softened under your chest now, pliant instead of brittle, but the chamber remains thick with chill. In that stillness, your nose catches the scents that the sheets have been keeping. They rise as the fabric warms, faint and layered, each one a story of its own. The first is soap-sharp, dry, the smell of lye that clings long after the washing is done. It is not unpleasant, though it has no softness. It is the smell of work, of water boiled and stirred, of women's hands rubbed raw at tubs you never see. It fills the cloth as surely as the threads do, as much a part of the linen as its weave. Beneath it, faint but clear, is lavender, old, tired, pressed once into sachets and tucked away at corners. What remains now is only a whisper, a dry ghost of summer fields that no longer bloom. It drifts up in small pockets, noticeable when your cheek presses closer to the pillow seam or when you shift an arm into a fold not yet warmed. For a moment you can almost see it, purple stems bowing under bees, a haze of sun. Then the image fades, leaving only a dry sweetness in your nose. Deeper still lies smoke. It has no source in this chamber, but the castle itself breathes smoke into everything. Hearths burn day after day. Chimneys send their soot through cracks. Air carries it like a secret. The sheets are no exception. They hold the faint, dark tang, dry and earthy, the reminder that no matter how fine the bed, it belongs to a house that eats wood and exhales ash. Together, these scents mingle into something steady. Soap, lavender, smoke, they are not rich, not perfumed, not grand. They are ordinary in their persistence, woven into fabric as much as the linen threads themselves. They are the smells you know best: work, memory, fire. You lie among them, breathing them in, until they become your own breath. You roll slightly onto your side, pressing your nose deeper into the sheet. The scent grows stronger here, concentrated where the cloth folds tight. The soap sharpens, the lavender lingers, the smoke settles at the back. You let the mixture fill you, not because you enjoy it, but because it is part of the bed, part of the chamber, part of the work. The quilt above answers with its own smell wool, dense and oily. The scent of sheep that once walked hills you will never see. It clings to the feathers inside as well, though fainter, muted by years. Together they create the full scent of the bed. Soap and lavender in the linen, smoke in the weave, wool in the cover. Nothing is hidden, everything is plain. You accept it all with each long breath. As your warmth deepens, the smells loosen more easily, rising like steam from stone after rain. You imagine that they have been waiting, trapped in the frozen threads all night, and now they climb out one by one as you coax the fabric into life. You cannot see them, but you picture them as wisps, grey, purple, brown, weaving together into the invisible air above you. They settle again quickly, invisible, but for a moment they are alive. Your hand shifts slightly, brushing the linen at the hem. The cloth there has less smell, washed more often, worn thinner. You notice the difference, subtle but sure. Fewer stories clinging, less weight of past days. It is lighter, cleaner, plainer. You run your fingertip along its edge, then return to the fuller scent near your chest, preferring its density, its proof of use. The chamber remains silent but for breath. The sleepers on the far side, deep and slow. Yours close beside it, even and measured. The smells rest between, filling the gap where words never would. They keep you company in this task, quiet companions made of soap and lavender and smoke. They ask nothing of you but to breathe them, and you do, because you have nothing else to offer. In time the scents fade into sameness. Soap no longer sharpens, lavender no longer whispers, smoke no longer drifts. They become one smell, one steady presence, the smell of the bed, the smell of the work. You lie within it, and it lies around you, and neither tries to escape. You lie still and let your ears do the walking. Sound, in a winter chamber, travels as if it had fur on its feet, soft, careful, undecided. At first you hear nothing beyond the hush you and the sleeper keep between you. Then the world outside remembers itself. A tiny tick comes from the window, so small it might be your imagination standing up to stretch. Another tick follows it, then a faint crack, not angry, only practical, as frost shifts its grip on the glass and on the wooden frame that holds it in place. Winter, ever generous, improves on silence by adding little sounds it can call its own. You look toward the pale square that the window makes. Frost paints its ferns and feathers across the glass, and behind that, a slow light thinks about becoming day. The first crack is followed by a soft, grainy scrape snow sliding a finger's width down the outer sill. You cannot see the fall, but your ear understands the sound of crystals letting go. It is quiet work, this thawing and refreezing, this bargaining between cold and colder. You listen to the negotiations without offering advice. Outside, a branch reports its opinion with a single dry snap. No drama, just honesty. Ice is heavy, and wood is only wood. The sound reaches you thinly through stone and timber, but it carries the clear shape of the thing that made it. Somewhere nearer, the lead that hems the panes clicks as it tightens, then loosens, then tightens again, metal playing its patient game with the weather. It is a small game, the sort you win by continuing to exist. You approve. The roof speaks as well, a low groan moving along the rafters like a yawn that never fully opens. The bed answers with its own small creaks, the rope grid giving tiny notes as your warmth persuades the feathers to settle differently. Inside and outside keep time with each other. Frost cracks there, chord murmurs here. The rhythm is not musical exactly, but it is orderly, and order is the castle's favorite lullaby. You draw one slow breath and feel it on your upper lip, warmer than the air it meets. The window ticks again, brighter, like a pin touching a cup. You think of the glass that came a long way to be here, uneven and wavy, catching light in thicker places and letting it pass in thinner ones. A thin strip of brightness creeps onto the quilt's edge, no wider than a ribbon. You do not chase it, you let it arrive. In the yard below, if you imagine the yard, which you do not strictly need to, someone moves across crusted snow. The step is careful, placed to avoid the deep, soft spots, and the sound comes up to you as a muffled crunch, steady and reasonable. A gate bar drops with a padded thud, then another. Farther still, so far the sound is almost a thought. A cartwheel complains as the rim tries to remember being round in a morning that would prefer it square. Nothing is in a hurry. Winter does not reward haste. The window gives a longer crack, a slender line of sound that seems to walk from one corner to the other. You feel it trace the stone through your cheek on the pillow, though you know that is only your mind agreeing with your ear. A bead of meltwater must be gathering somewhere at the pane's bottom edge. You can hear the tiny tack of a drop letting go, then the softer, slower wick as it finds the sill and freezes there again, deciding it has gone far enough for now. Closer, the curtains lift a finger with the draft and set it down again. A dim thread of cold air draws along the floor, climbs the bedpost, and fades under the quilt's authority. You oblige by giving the quilt the slightest shoulder, so the air you have warmed can stay with you while the ambitious chill wanders off to make a career elsewhere. The bed approves in a language made of quiet. A far roof, perhaps the stable, sheds a little skin. You hear it as a hushy slide followed by a soft scatter, as if someone were sifting grain with absent care. Then a horse in that same imagined stable gives one tolerant snort, which arrives at your chamber as the lowest possible rumour. It does not disturb the sleeper, it does not disturb you. It only adds weight to the morning. Animals are breathing, wood is adjusting, frost is cracking. The world is busy doing nothing, one exact sound at a time. Your hand rests on the sheet, palm open, and the linen reports nothing at all, which is how you know it is learning warmth. The window ticks twice more in tidy agreement with your pulse. For a moment, the frost pattern on the pane seems to shift, a leaf losing a tooth, a feather losing a barb, but it is only light finding a new angle. You grant it the triumph anyway. Winter enjoys its illusions. The stone under the window answers with a very small pop, like a seed deciding against sprouting. Heat from somewhere your body, the banked fire 2 rooms away, the grey edge of dawn has asked it to reconsider its exact shape. Stone will not be told, but it will consider. The pop is its way of saying so. You press your tongue to the back of your teeth and feel the echo there, faint as the memory of salt. If you listen for voices, you hear none, not yet. Only the house, speaking in timber, iron, glass, and frost. It is a polite conversation, the kind exchanged by neighbours who share a fence and never borrow anything. You become a part of it by not interrupting. Your breath adds a low line, the sleeper's breath adds a second. The rope bed provides punctuation. Outside, winter writes small marks on the margin of the day. Another branch gives up a tiny shard with a crisp pat. A crow, finally, remarks on the matter, exactly once one syllable, dry and absolute, and then has no more to contribute. A pair of footsteps crosses the distant stones with the caution reserved for ice. You don't trust, but must use. The window, feeling left out, offers one more tick, sharper than the rest, then falls quiet, proud of its performance. You turn your face a fraction deeper into the pillow and find the air warmer there by the smallest amount. The linen holds the shape of your cheek and the learned scent of soap. The quilt rests heavy with the same confidence it has had all morning. The bed no longer notices you as an intruder. The room no longer tests your balance. Outside continues its tiny theatre, snaps, slides, drips, each a thread so thin you could break it with a thought, if you were the sort to pull at threads. You are not. You let them run their course. Eventually, even winter tires of talking. The cracks grow less frequent. The slide of snow becomes a memory. The little clicks in the frame turn to a pause. The light behind the glass is a shade stronger, if not braver. You count a slow 4 in and a slower 6 out, and in that time nothing bursts, nothing collapses, nothing asks for you. The world outside keeps its own bed, and you keep this one, warming it until it forgets it was ever cold. That is the entire arrangement, and it seems once again to be working. The candle on the table burns low, left from the evening before, its flame a thin yellow tongue licking at the air in quiet insistence. You lie still, watching it from the corner of your eye. The wick bends slightly as though it has grown weary, and the flame follows, leaning toward the draught that moves invisibly along the stone wall. Each time it wavers, the shadows around the chamber shift in answer, sliding long and slow across the carved posts of the bed. The tallow has run down unevenly. Thick folds cling to the sides, hardened into pale ridges, while one stream has reached all the way down the length of the candle and left a lump where it cooled against the brass holder. A single bead trembles now, fat and milky, clinging to the rim, not certain whether it will fall. You keep your gaze on it longer than you should, as if your warmth alone could persuade it either to stay or to drop. It holds, stubborn in its stillness. The light does not brighten the room so much as it colours it faintly, painting the air with honey where it touches. The canopy above remains in shadow, the window still a pale square of frost, but the quilt at your chest wears a glow, soft and dull, as though it has borrowed a memory of gold. The embroidered flowers at the hem shine for a moment, raised threads catching the flicker before sinking back into grey. You let your fingertips rest there, following the flame's rhythm without moving. The candle smokes at intervals, a thin curl rising when the wick bends too far and burns itself. The smoke smells faintly bitter, sharp against the lavender ghosts in the linen. It lingers for a breath before the draught carries it away, folding it into the chamber's shadows. You breathe it in without thinking, then exhale slower, as if to send it back to its place. The flame sputters briefly, shrinks, then swells again. Each time it seems ready to surrender, it gathers itself and burns taller, a narrow reed trembling in the wind of its own making. You think of how many such flames the castle holds at this moment, hundreds perhaps, some guttering, some bright, some already fallen into smoke. This one is yours for now, the only companion other than the steady sleeper beside you. Its light strokes the edges of the wooden table. The grain stands out darker where the wax has dripped, shiny where the polish has worn away. A pewter dish glints faintly, catching and returning the light like a coin glimpsed at the bottom of water. The comb lies dull, teeth casting faint shadows like little black bars. None of these things stir, only the flame stirs, and even it is modest in its motion. You shift slightly under the quilt. The sheets beneath have grown soft around you, pliant, willing, holding your warmth instead of resisting it. The smell of smoke from the candle mingles with the bed's own scents now, so that you can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. Lavender fades into tallow, soap into bitter wick, wool into faint ash. The chamber becomes one breath of mingled smells, carried on the wavering flame. The flame leans farther now, reaching toward the draught, its tongue nearly horizontal before it rights itself again. Shadows stretch long across the quilt, then shrink back, then stretch again. It is a slow, patient dance, one you could watch for hours without tiring. Each sway is almost the same as the last, but not entirely. That small difference keeps your gaze steady, your mind quiet. A drop finally lets go, sliding down the length of the candle in silence, leaving a thin trail behind it. It lands at the base with a faint click, then stills, another ridge in the frozen folds. The flame wavers once more but remains lit, holding on with quiet dignity. You breathe in, breathe out, and let it show you how to remain. You wait until the bed beneath you feels changed again, until the fabric has learned your heat in one place. Then you make the smallest shift, a turn of the shoulder, a slow roll of the hip, the careful lifting of one arm, so the quilt rises only a finger's width before it settles again. The movement is less than the length of a breath, but the linen knows. The side you leave cools at once. The side you enter gasps at the sudden press of warmth. Both sides are served, each in their own time. The feathers below sigh in their quiet language, sliding to rearrange themselves under your weight. A few crunch faintly where quills are still stubborn, but most yield without protest. The ropes that hold the mattress together complain in their thin voices, not loudly, only enough to remind you that they are still listening. You give them patience, holding still until they hush again. Beds, like people, do not like surprises. Now you press the cold half with the length of your back. The sheet there is harsher, stiff with the night's frost, unbroken, unkind. You do not flinch from it. You lean gently, slowly, letting it take the heat the way stone takes sun, first reluctantly, then greedily. Your shoulder feels the bite fade. Your hip grows less tense. Your leg finds the linen softening as though it had always meant to. The change is invisible but certain, a small victory of patience over frost. Your arm stretches across the quilt. You draw it back, then place it again, repeating the motion so the linen beneath it remembers to loosen. Each time you move, you stop at the end, palm flat, breath steady, allowing your warmth to seep down into the weave. The quilt shifts above, settling back with a heavy press that pins you against the work, forcing you into stillness once more. The air grows closer beneath the cover. It no longer smells sharply of soap and smoke. Now it smells of you, your breath, your warmth, your wool. You have altered the small climate of this space, turned it from a frozen hollow into a pocket of living air. The sleeper will never know, never guess, never wonder. The work erases itself the moment it is finished, leaving no proof but comfort. That is its measure of success. Your cheek finds the pillow edge again, and the fabric no longer shocks. It holds you evenly now, the embroidery pressing lightly against your skin, as though it were always meant to. You close your eyes, not in weariness but in calm. The stillness of the room deepens. Only the faint creak of rope and the muffled rustle of feathers keep you company, and even they grow quiet after a time. You roll one more time, carefully, reclaiming the first side. It greets you with a lesser chill now, a mildness that proves your work. You settle your back against it, let your legs stretch, toes brushing the far end again. The linen there no longer feels sharp, but even, softened into something that could be mistaken for natural warmth. You know better, but that knowledge belongs to you alone. You breathe deeply, the quilt heavy on your chest, the sheets pliant beneath, the mattress sighing as it learns your way to new. This is how the bed becomes whole. Each half tended, each corner persuaded, each stubborn place coaxed into agreement. Your movements leave no trace, only readiness. When the noble wakes, he will slip into this bed and never think of frost, never wonder about cold corners. He will stretch, yawn, and believe the warmth has always been his. You will be gone by then, back to the corridors, the hearth, the buckets, the silence. Your work remains only in the absence of discomfort. That absence is enough. Your hand climbs toward the pillow the way frost climbs a window slowly, deciding each inch before it accepts the next. The linen there is tighter woven, stiffer at the edge, where a careful hand turned hem and needle back on itself 100 times. Your fingers find the line of embroidery just where it should be, a narrow border that pretends to be decoration and is, in truth, someone's best evening spent in lamplight. You lay your fingertips flat and travel the raised thread, as if it were a path through a small, orderly garden. The first leaf is done in short, patient stitches, each one no longer than a grain of barley, set along a curve that is nearly a curve. Nearly is enough. Your finger pads feel every step of it, the way the needle bit and released, a metronome in cloth. You follow that curve to a tidy circle of satin-smooth passes, thread laid close as fish scales, catching the faint glow from the dying candle. In the grey light it is only texture, but your skin reads colour anyway. The work hums faint red where madder once soaked the yarn, a red now faded into the quiet of winter. You pause at a knot, a small lump where the thread changed hands or patience thinned. It sits on the underside of the border, almost hidden, as though the maker hoped the pillowcase would keep its secrets. Your thumb strokes over it, not to judge, only to acknowledge. Secrets and pillows have always been on speaking terms. You move on to the next motif, a sprig that might be a flower or might be a guess at a flower. 5 petals neatly arranged around nothing in particular. The stitches seat close, the edge clean, the kind of steadiness that comes from doing this again and again until the body knows before the mind asks. Beneath your cheek the linen is warm now. The embroidery presses a faint relief onto your skin, a map that will vanish as soon as you lift your head. You trace another line, this one a stem that meanders as though the needle. Woman's thoughts wandered to the pot on the hearth or the child at her knee or the winter outside the shutter. The stem straightens again after a few inches, as thoughts do once they remember the business at hand. A few threads are furred up where years of faces have rubbed them. They tickle your finger like dry grass. At the corner, the border turns with a confident little square, a right angle that believes in geometry. The stitch length shortens on the bend, tidy and precise, the kind of care no one will notice with eyes and everyone will feel with forehead. You press there gently, the warmth of your hand softening the fibers so their small pride is preserved. A loose tail peeks out the end of a thread, trimmed almost, but not quite, flush. You could pinch it away between nail and thumb, and the steward would never know. You do not. You press it flat and let it stay. A tiny flag flying in a country no noble will visit. The bouquet pattern repeats along the edge. Leaf, blossom, leaf, bud. Your fingers learn the rhythm, and once learned, it is all you can feel. Leaf, blossom, leaf, bud, pleasantly predictable, stubbornly the same. The quiet repetition drifts into your breath until even that seems stitched. Draw, release, draw, release. Between motifs, the ground cloth is smoother and simpler. The threads are lined like rows of snow on a roof. You stroke that plainness too, because even plainness likes to be noticed. Far off, in the place where your work is not, the sleeper shifts. The rope grid hums and stops. You wait without moving, face still on the pillow, fingers resting on a leaf that does not mind your company. The breath beside you steadies again, long, deep, harmless. You go back to counting stitches by touch. You could name the method if naming would help. Little steps here, long lines there, but names add nothing to what your fingers already know. Perseverance makes patterns, and patterns make rest. A flower near the center of the edge is different from the others, fuller, the stitches longer, the finish smoother. Perhaps the maker found her rhythm that day. Perhaps the thread behaved. Perhaps the light was generous and the house quiet. You circle it with 2 fingertips, as if congratulating a small success that has waited years to be praised. Success does not object. It never does. You wonder not sharply, just with the gentle curiosity a warm bed allows who did this work. A maid in the solar with good eyes and respectable taste, a daughter told to practice, a travelling woman paid in bread and the calm of a bench by the fire. You do not press the thought too far. Thoughts, like threads, fray when pulled. Whoever she was, she knew how to make a flower with no smell stand in for all the flowers that do. Your hand is the only witness available this morning. That will have to be enough. The candle gives a small spit, and light shifts across the pillow. The thread glints and then goes dull. You let your hand travel onward, finding where the border dips under the pillow proper, the place no fingers are meant to go. The stitches there are looser, and you smile. Not unkindly ambition fades at the edge of visibility. You withdraw your hand and return to the face side, to the sprigs that were made for touch. You press the heel of your palm against the embroidery to share a little more heat with it. The raised threads soften a fraction, standing less boldly now that they have been reminded what warmth feels like. Your cheek follows, and for a breath or two you let the border mark your skin. It is a frivolous thing to do, and therefore pleasant. You lift your head and the marks fade at once, as expected. No record of your small indulgence remains. The pillow has settled under you, taking your weight without groaning. Feathers inside rally to your cheek, eager to please anyone who is not yet awake enough to complain. You lift the edge with 2 fingers. That is enough to let a spoonful of your warmed air slip across to the outer side and keep company with the threads there. Air, like kindness, does best when passed along. You set the edge down again and smooth it twice, just as you smoothed the sheet earlier, quieting any wrinkles that would argue with a waking head. You travel the last lengths of border, the way a reader lingers over the last lines of a page he is not ready to turn. Leaf, blossom, leaf, bud. Not ignored, tail tamed, corner obeyed. When you reach the starting place again, you press your fingertips together as if closing a book. The story of this pillow is not grand, but it has a beginning and an end, and you have walked it with your hand. That seems, for this hour, like more than most things ask. The quilt's weight reminds you of the task's center. The bed beneath answers with that small, satisfied silence that follows contented creaks. The pillow, warmed where a forehead will land, keeps its counsel, apostle of comfort and secrecy both. You let your hand rest flat across the embroidery one last time, and feel nothing urgent, no cold bite left, no stubborn ridge. Only the even, modest rise of thread above cloth, as unshowy as breath. You slide your hand away, palms to the sheet again, work drifting back to warmth, and not to flowers. Somewhere down the corridor, the day sharpens its teeth. Within the bed, time stays dull and comfortable. The boy with the warmed pillow will never notice the garden he sleeps on. That is ordinary. That is expected. You are, after all, in the business of making unnoticed things more gentle. You let that be your small joke and your larger truth, and you breathe the same slow breath the pillow has been waiting for since last night. The quilt presses heavier as you let your body sink deeper, and you feel the weight as a kind of conversation. It does not scold, it does not comfort, it simply reminds you that you are smaller than the bed, and that your work lies beneath its authority. The heaviness pushes you into stillness, and stillness is the language this room understands best. You give it freely. Beneath you, the linen accepts, already less sharp, already yielding, already convinced by the warmth you have carried into it. Your shoulders let go first. The downward pull of the quilt is steady, spreading across the breadth of your chest until it flattens you as gently as a press of hand. Then your hips settle, bones nudging into feathers that shuffle aside without enthusiasm. The ropes below groan once, faint as a distant hinge, and then a silence. Your legs, stretched long, feel the weight too, the quilt's edge lying across them like a bar, but a bar without punishment. Altogether, it pins you, persuades you to stay, persuades you to become part of the bed rather than merely its visitor. The air beneath the quilt grows closer. It was sharp before, bitter with frost and the residue of night, but now it thickens with your breath, a quiet warmth that has nowhere to go. You exhale, and it lingers near your lips. You inhale, and it returns, less cold each time. The space feels sealed, a chamber within the chamber, and though it is heavy, it is also sure. There is comfort in the certainty of enclosure, in knowing the quilt allows no draught to wander freely. You run your hand along the underside of that quilt. The cloth is rougher than the linen sheet, wool pressing through fabric in tiny ridges. It scratches at your palm, but faintly, the kind of scratch that feels alive rather than hostile. You spread your fingers wide, palm open, pressing against the underside until you feel the quilt sag slightly above you. Its weight adjusts, folds shifting in answer. You are beneath it, and it is above you, and together you create the air pocket that will soon belong to another. The heaviness is not only physical, it is a mood, a demand. It presses away thoughts that rise too quickly, forcing you into the rhythm of breath and heat. It asks you not to stir, not to speak, not to imagine, only to endure. You comply, because resistance would change nothing, and compliance turns into quiet. Quiet is the true goal of this task, more than warmth itself. A silence that settles into fabric so that no waking ear suspects disturbance. You shift your ankle slightly, only enough to relieve a tightness at the edge of your shoe. The quilt resettles, its mass falling into the new hollow you made. The sound is muffled, more felt than heard, a slow rustle, like grain being poured. You hold still afterward, giving the bed time to pretend nothing happened. The feathers beneath you sigh, and then the silence returns, stronger for having been tested. The candle at the table has burned shorter now, its flame steadier, smaller. Its light flickers across the quilt, picking out faint patterns in the weave, glimmers of pale wool threads catching shine. You watch the shadows ripple across the mound, shapes bending as the quilt breathes with you. They rise and fall, tiny hills in a vast country of cloth, moved only by the slow tide of air. You imagine for a moment that the weight is endless, that you are pressed between earth and sky, unable to move, forced into stillness until the seasons change. The thought does not frighten you, it comforts. To be still is to be free of choosing. To be pressed is to be kept. The quilt teaches this with each slow reminder of its presence, each inch of pressure across your limb. Your hand returns to the sheet. It is warm now, almost entirely. Where your chest lies, where your legs press, where your arm rests, the linen has given up its frost. Only the farthest corner, near the edge of the bed, remains brittle, untouched. You know you will reach it in time, the quilt makes sure of that. So you stay, you breathe, you let the heaviness continue its lesson, forcing you into patience, erasing the thought of hurry. The chamber outside remains quiet, the sleeper's breath steady, the castle still waiting to be fully awake. But here, under the quilt, pressed and enclosed, you belong only to the bed, and the bed belongs to its future occupant. That is the agreement. That is the work. The hour that follows has its own texture, thinner than cloth and thicker than air, and you enter it the way a foot enters snow that already knows the shape of the boot that will press it. Time loosens in this pocket beneath the quilt. Minutes do not stand in a line. They fold, overlap, and lie down beside one another like rushes after sweeping. You keep your eyes half closed, not to dream but to make the darkness easier to carry. The bed, now nearly warm where it should be, asks only the smallest currency in return: stillness, paid in long breaths. Drowsiness arrives as politely as any guest who knows they ought not be here. It knocks without sound, waits, and then sits down on the far side of your thoughts with its hands folded, pretending to look at nothing in particular. Your head grows weighty near the pillow seam. Your eyelids find their purpose lower, and the muscles behind your eyes unspool like ribbon in a drawer. You could sleep easily, with no negotiation, simply by allowing yourself to lean into the soft grey hallway where tasks dissolve and hours forget their names. Your breath makes a small, regular weather beneath the quilt, a tide that rises and falls along your ribs. Each exhale leaves the air a shade warmer. Each inhale returns the favor. The rope lattice under the mattress offers a modest answer now and then, a little spoke song where tension shifts by the width of a thread. The feathers reply with their rustle, a language of tiny pages turning in a book without words. You listen because listening is easier than thinking and kinder to the work. You try a count, not a soldier's count or a priest's, a servant's count made of chores. 4 for breath in, 6 for breath out. 8 for stillness, where no limb argues. 10 for patience, the number you use when a ladle refuses to hang straight and must be coaxed with a gentle tap. Numbers become velvety when repeated. Soon they are not numbers at all, only the feeling of passing quietly over the same stones until the path remembers you. A tick from the window, a soft tap from the candle's cup, a distant thud that might be a door or a log finding a more honest position in the kitchen fire. Each arrives as if wrapped in wool. None ask you to answer. You accept them the way a hand accepts warm water, fingers opening without instruction. Somewhere in the corridor, frost keeps its appointment with iron, somewhere in the yard, a broom draws straight lines in the snow and then forgets them. Everything continues, and you continue not to interfere. Your body learns the bed now, as well as the bed has learned your body. The small, hard place near your ankle is gone. The quill changed its mind and pledged loyalty to softness. The corner by your knee no longer clings to its frost name. It has taken the name of linen again and is content with it. Your hands lie palm down, not because anyone ordered them, but because the sheet asked politely, and you obliged. The steady animal of your heart rests in your chest, working without ceremony. The border of the pillow nudges your cheek with its low hills of embroidery, barely there now that warmth has coaxed the thread to lie down. You adjust the angle of your jaw so the seam will not crease the fabric too sharply. Even that is part of the task. A good bed tells no tale in the morning, no ridge, no valley, no impatient wrinkle, only the impression that someone kind has already lived in it and found it agreeable. Sleep tests the latch again. It would like to come in and sit where drowsiness has placed a cushion. You answer it with the small work that keeps you in the doorway. You imagine smoothing a line along the sheet with the flat of your hand. You think through the distance from shoulder to hip, as if warmth were a traveller you must escort from one village to the next. You do not move much, only enough to remind your bones that they belong to you, and not to the quilt. Sleep, seeing you employed, drifts down the corridor to bother someone else. You visit the thought of bread, because bread is sturdy and does not lead to sharp hungers. A heel near the fire, crust glossy with a little steam, crumb soft and plain. This thought is round and simple, and does not tug you toward kitchen doors you cannot open from here. You visit the thought of water, because water is honest. It sits in its jug, cold and dark, waiting for labor and lips. You do not drink it in your mind. You simply set it on a table and leave it there. Even your thoughts behave with good manners. Under the quilt, the air has taken your measure. It no longer debates whether to keep its cold. It has chosen to be warm and to remain so while you remain. The line along your shins that once felt like glass is only cloth. The place under your shoulder blades that once felt like board is only feather. You have replaced the room's sharpness with dullness, and dullness is another word for rest. Nothing announces itself. Everything admits to being ordinary. A small, almost laughable itch appears on the bridge of your nose, because that is what itches do when stillness is complete. You refuse it, the dignity of a scratch. You answer it with breath, which is what you have been given in abundance. The itch loses interest and goes somewhere else to be important. Your hands stay where they are, because hands that stay are warmer than hands that wander. You might almost slip. The hallway of sleep has laid down a carpet. The door has swung inward. The darkness beyond is not night but wool. Your head makes a tiny nod, the sort that would start a dream under any other roof. The rope grid murmurs. The pillow exhales a feather's worth of air. You press your tongue softly to the roof of your mouth the way you have taught yourself, and that small motion tethers you, light as thread, to this side of things. Drowsiness shrugs and looks away. When you open your eyes again just a fraction, just enough to see light has climbed one stair higher at the window. You cannot tell whether 2 minutes or 20 have passed. You do not need to. The sheet under your ribs is fully yours now. The far corners wait with less suspicion. The future occupant will never meet a single edge of night. The count in your head has rounded itself into silence. Your breath is the only clock you require, and it has kept time without asking wages. So you remain in the hour's soft pocket until the pocket has done its sewing. You give your heat without haste, the way a banked ember gives its glow to a twig that makes no noise. And when you feel that delicate threshold where the bed stops receiving and begins to keep, you do nothing at all, which is the final part of the work. You allow the warmth to belong to the bed rather than to you. It is, after all, what you came to leave behind. The corridor speaks again, faint and uneven, a language of shoes and stone. You hear them before you see them, footsteps echoing through the long passage outside the chamber door. They are careful at first, placed one after another with the rhythm of someone not yet fully awake. The sound carries in the castle the way wind carries through trees, soft at its edges, sharp in the middle. You stay still under the quilt, listening as though your body could grow ears across its skin. The footsteps are not loud, but the stones exaggerate them. Each heel touches with a hollow tap, each toe drags a whisper, each pause leaves an echo hanging in the air. You count them without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, 4. A pause, then 5, 6. A servant perhaps, carrying something awkward, slowing at turn. The corridor always slows you too. Its corners are sharper than they appear in daylight. You picture the figure without lifting your head. Woolen shoes, thin soles, the slight scuff of a leather strap that needs mending. Their arms may hold a bucket, for you hear the faint slosh of water at one step, the quick correction at the next. Or it might be a bundle of rushes, shifting with the same kind of sound. You do not need to know which. The image is enough to carry you beyond the chamber for a moment, into the rhythm of someone else's task. The footsteps pass the chamber door, their sound muffled by the heavy oak and its iron bands. You imagine the servant glancing once toward the latch, not stopping, not daring, moving on with their burden. Their tread fades down the passage, swallowed by stone, until the corridor holds only silence again. But the silence is not the same. It has been stretched, opened, filled with the memory of sound. You stay still, holding your breath for the space of a count, just in case the steps return. They do not. Instead you hear another sound, softer, from farther off, the muffled clatter of something set on a table, a stool scraping lightly, a low cough smothered quickly. The castle is beginning to stir. Its voice grows louder with each minute, though here, under the quilt, you are still apart from it. The sleeper beside you does not wake. His breath remains heavy, the slow tide of someone who believes the world will wait for him. Perhaps he hears nothing at all. You wonder briefly what it is to lie in such confidence, to believe footsteps belong only to others, never to you. The thought lingers only a moment, then fades with your next exhale. The door itself makes no sound. The latch holds, the hinges rest. But you feel its presence across the room, a guardian between this quiet work and the life outside. The footsteps remind you that soon enough, the chamber will no longer be yours. The bed will belong to the boy who never thinks of cold sheets, the corridor to the steward who notes every wrinkle in the day. For now, though, the space remains yours alone, and the sound of footsteps is only an echo that cannot reach you. You let your fingers brush the sheet again, grounding yourself in fabric instead of thought. The linen is fully warm now, softened everywhere you touch. It no longer resists, no longer clings to the frost of night. Your warmth has spread evenly, hidden in the weave, impossible to trace. It feels natural, as though the bed had never been otherwise. That is your proof of success, the absence of evidence. The footsteps do not return, but the chamber remembers them. The silence afterward feels fuller, more alive, like a pond that has been stirred and then gone still. You breathe within it, matching its depth, and the quilt presses down in steady agreement. Nothing disturbs you further, not yet. You are safe to continue the last part of your task. The quiet shifts again, not with footsteps this time, but with the faint scrape of wood against wood. Somewhere beyond the chamber, perhaps 2 rooms over, a bench is moved or a stool dragged closer to the hearth. The sound is distant, softened by stone, but the castle carries every motion like a memory. You hear it as though it is inside your own chest, each scrape dragging gently across your ribs. You stay where you are, the quilt heavy and still above you, the sheet fully warm beneath. The work is nearly done, yet the chamber itself insists on reminding you that the day does not wait. Servants have begun their morning, whether you see them or not. A fire is being stoked in the kitchens, a pot placed on its hook, bread perhaps shifted nearer the embers. You imagine it easily because it has always been so. You do not need to see smoke to know it curls already. The scrape comes again, shorter, sharper this time, as though someone has nudged the same bench back into place. Then silence follows, thick and unbroken, a silence that feels rehearsed, deliberate. You listen hard, but nothing else arrives. No cough, no step, no murmur of voices. It is the silence of people working with care, their motions exact, their speech held until later. That silence is as heavy as the quilt on your shoulders, and just as confining. You close your eyes against it, though they were hardly open before. The weight of lids and lashes makes no difference, yet you feel the stillness deepen when you deny its sight. Beneath you, the mattress adjusts slightly, giving where your hip presses, sighing against your shoulder. You realize how much your body has sunk into it now, the straw shifting quietly beneath the linen tick, whispering its small protest at being pressed so long in one place. The sound is almost nothing, but you hear it, and it comforts you. Your breath slows to meet it, shallow and unhurried. In through the nose, warm against the quilt's underside, out through parted lips, heavier, spreading across the pillow. It becomes difficult to tell whether you are breathing for yourself or for the chamber, as though the stone needs the rhythm as much as you do. The walls seem to lean closer when you exhale, as if to listen. The scrape of wood does not return. It leaves only an imprint, the way a gesture leaves a shadow after the hand is gone. You know the castle well enough to fill in what you do not hear. A door opening on its hinges, a log placed carefully on a grate, ash stirred until it wakes. Those sounds are too faint to reach you, yet you feel them just the same, moving invisibly through the corridors like air. You shift slightly under the quilt, not enough to disturb the even heat, but enough to notice your body. The warmth clings to your back, to your legs, to the bend of your elbow. It makes no distinction between noble and servant, between the boy who lies here and the man who will later take his place. Heat is democratic in its reach. You find yourself almost amused at the thought, though your lips do not move. The bed itself grows more convincing by the minute. What once felt like a task has become indistinguishable from rest. If you closed your eyes long enough, you might not know whether you were meant to rise soon or remain forever. The line blurs. That is the true work. To erase the line until warmth and sleep are the same. Outside, another faint sound begins. Not wood this time, not footsteps, but a low murmur of voices, 2 or 3 together. They pass along the corridor, far enough that the words do not carry, close enough that you hear the shape of conversation, a question, a reply, a pause where both listen for a third. Then they move away again, leaving behind only the hush of stone. You do not open your eyes to follow them. You remain curled in your place, breathing with the chamber, allowing the silence to fold over you again. The quilt presses down, the pillow accepts the shape of your head, the sheet remembers your warmth. Nothing more is asked of you in this moment. The scrape, the murmur, the echo, each has had its turn, and each has gone quiet. The castle holds steady. You hold steady with it. The air has shifted again, though only you seem to notice. A faint stirring at the bottom of the door, as though a draught has slipped free from some unseen crack. It brushes against the edge of the bed, lifting a corner of the quilt by the smallest degree. Not enough to reveal, not enough to chill, only enough to remind you that the outside still exists, a reminder carried in the faintest current of cold. You press your shoulder deeper into the mattress, and the quilt settles back into place. The pillow seems to mold more willingly around your head, as though it too prefers the stillness of no interruption. The sound of your breath is louder than the draft, and you let it be. Inhale slow, exhale slower. The air warms itself against your lips before it leaves. Somewhere above, a ceiling beam groans. The sound is long, lazy, almost indulgent wood adjusting against the weight it has carried for decades, perhaps centuries. It does not complain, only shifts. The beam knows its place, knows it will remain long after you, long after those you serve. Its patience hums through the chamber, as much a part of the air as the draft. You shift your legs slightly beneath the quilt, stretching them until toes brush the linen end of the bed. The fabric there is cooler, less convinced by your warmth. It waits to be persuaded, and slowly, patiently, it is. You retreat again, pulling your feet back toward the heated hollow you have made. The contrast pleases you, the difference between warmth earned and coolness still untouched. The chamber gives no further sound. It is the sort of quiet that grows louder the longer you hear it. Your ears seem to expand, reaching for even the smallest interruption. yet none arrives. No footsteps, no scrape, no whisper, no cough. Only the draft under the door, the breath under the quilt, the beam overhead sighing once and then refusing to repeat itself. You allow your mind to wander, though not far, perhaps to the kitchens below, where hands are moving before mouths have spoken. Perhaps to the courtyard, where a pale frost clings still to cobbles until the sun scalds it into water. Perhaps to the stables, where a horse stamps in rhythm to its own dreams. All of it feels possible, yet none of it touches you. You remain in your bed, beneath your quilt, inside your chamber, a boy who warms what others will claim. Your eyes drift closed, though they had hardly opened since you lay down. The lids grow heavier each time you blink, until blinking itself ceases. Behind them, darkness is not pure. Shapes float there, shadows of quilt stitching, echoes of the wooden beam, patterns left by the fire you do not see but imagine still burns. The mind insists on filling spaces, even when it is not asked to. Your arms lie quiet at your sides. Fingers curl slightly into the sheet, remembering its first coldness, though it is warm now. The touch lingers, half memory, half present sensation. You find yourself holding on to it, as though keeping record of what you have achieved. Cold turned to comfort, chill turned to calm. That is the work, and it is nearly done. The draft slips under the door again, only to retreat. Its rhythm is inconsistent, like a guest who cannot decide whether to enter. Each time you feel the faint lift at the edge of the quilt, each time it lowers again with the ease of surrender. The repetition soothes you, a cycle without consequence. Up, down, cold, warm, outside, inside. The castle is awake, though it pretends otherwise. You are awake, though you slip closer to something else with each breath. The boy and the bed become indistinguishable in their stillness. Nobles may arrive, nobles may rest, nobles may forget who warmed what they lie upon. But you for now are the warmth itself. Nothing else is required. Not rising, not speaking, not moving. Only the steady continuation of breath, the quiet hum of a chamber that asks little and gives enough. The draft will pass again, the beam will groan again, but you will remain here, sinking, softening, settling deeper into the bed that has learned your shape. The hours stretch without hurry, the chamber growing thick with the weight of warmth that has settled in layers. The quilt no longer remembers its first stiffness. It bends willingly now, folding closer to you with each breath. Your body has written its presence into every fold, every hollow of the mattress, every faint crease of the linen sheet. The bed is no longer the castle's, it is yours, if only for a while. You lie still, and the world arranges itself around you. The faint creak of wood at the window frame carries through the room, a whisper of pressure against the glass. It is the sound of winter outside, pressing its palm against the barrier, curious but denied entry. You picture the frost clinging to the sill, the air outside sharp enough to nip, yet unable to pierce the comfort you have built beneath your quilt. Your breathing deepens, a rhythm steady as clockwork, though no clock ticks nearby. The castle does not run on minutes, but on tasks, on footsteps, on routines that stretch from dawn to dark and repeat again without complaint. You think of them briefly, the scurrying below firewood carried, pots scraped, laundry wrung in cold water, and then you think no more, because their pace has nothing to do with yours. You are warm, you are still, you are lying here until summoned. The draft under the door repeats itself, lazy now, less sharp. It has grown bored with its own insistence, perhaps, or perhaps your warmth has convinced it to soften. Either way, it no longer interrupts, but becomes part of the chamber's breathing. The room itself seems to inhale and exhale, with you at its center. You let your eyes close again, though they had not opened far. Behind them, nothing needs to be imagined. The bed is enough, the quilt is enough, the air is enough. You remind yourself softly, almost with a trace of amusement, that your job is to lie here and make everything feel less harsh. A boy filling a space with the simple insistence of body heat. Nothing more, nothing less. You stretch one leg carefully to the edge of the bed, testing the coolness where the quilt has not touched. Still colder than the rest, still waiting to be claimed. You draw your leg back quickly, preferring the comfort already earned. There will always be corners left to warm, but you need not reach for them now. They will wait. The ceiling above seems far, though it has never changed. Shadows of beams blur into one another, indistinct and fading as your eyes surrender. You do not need to count them, do not need to mark them. They are simply there, holding the weight above you as you hold the warmth below. Each beam does its work without complaint, and so do you. The quiet grows thicker. The chamber has chosen silence as its companion, and you have done the same. No thought pulls you forward, no memory drags you back. Only the present, stretched long and gentle, soft as wool, slow as breath. The bed is no longer something you lie upon. It is something you sink into. A lake without water, a hollow that takes and keeps. You no longer resist. You no longer distinguish where quilt ends and body begins. You are only warmth now, stored in cloth, absorbed in linen, waiting to be passed along. The castle remains awake elsewhere, but none of it matters. For now, it is only you, your breath, and the steady hush of a chamber that knows patience better than you ever could. The quilt no longer feels like fabric. It has melted into a layer of quiet air pressed close against your skin, hardly noticeable except when you imagine life without it. The chamber itself seems to have softened its corners. The stone walls, usually stiff with cold, blur as though they have absorbed a little of what you hold. Even the bed frame, wooden and stubborn, no longer creaks at your small shifts. Everything has chosen silence, as if conspiring to keep you from being disturbed. You do not move much now. Your arms rest heavy, your legs folded into their natural weight. You breathe, and the bed responds with a slight rise, a faint lowering. Inhale, exhale, a slow duet. It is the kind of rhythm that feels like it could last without end. Somewhere outside the chamber, a servant calls, though not for you. The voice comes thin and muffled, carried through stone. You notice it only briefly before the quiet swallows it whole. In this bed, you are not expected to answer. In this bed, you are only warmth, useful not by word or gesture, but by simple presence. The quilt remembers you. It holds the shape of your shoulders, the arc of your knees. It is a soft container that molds itself to every contour, becoming almost too familiar. You know when you will shift again, because the quilt will encourage it. Not yet, not soon, but later. When the weight of stillness asks for a small change, your mind wanders, but not far. You think of the nobles who will step into this chamber later. They will lower themselves onto the bed and feel no chill. They will believe the sheets are gentle by nature, that the castle itself has chosen kindness. They will not picture you here, breathing your warmth into the mattress, and that is as it should be. The bed holds no memory of who came before, only of the comfort left behind. You feel the draft under the door again, though now it plays differently. Less of a challenge, more of a sigh. The cold enters as a visitor who has already been told it is unwelcome but insists on being polite. It brushes along the floor, touches the wood, then loses its resolve. By the time it nears the bed, your heat has already triumphed. Your eyelids grow heavy even though you had not asked them to. The darkness behind them is thick but not threatening. It is a chamber in itself, an inner space softer than the quilt. You sink there willingly, aware that nothing urgent awaits. The air tastes faintly of wool, faintly of smoke, a reminder of the fires kept elsewhere in the castle. Someone tends them, someone always tends them. You are not that someone. You are here, and the fire is another boy's problem. You smile at the thought, not wide, but enough to shift your cheek against the pillow. And so the hours pass, though you cannot tell how many. Time has abandoned its strict march, and instead sits with you, cross-legged, unhurried, content. The chamber deepens into night, though you do not rise to see it. Shadows have folded themselves more tightly against the walls. The light that once brushed the stones has retreated to elsewhere, perhaps to hallways where torches fight the dark. Here, no flame burns. Only your body gives heat, and it is enough. Your ears become sharper when your eyes give in. You hear faint things, the shifting of the bed frame, as wood responds to pressure, the muted sigh of the window panes when touched by frost outside. Nothing loud, nothing pressing, All the sounds belong to a world where nothing is asked of you. Your breathing grows slower, and you wonder if the chamber matches it. If the air waits for you to exhale before it shifts again. If the quilt adjusts its weight in time with your ribs. There is no reason it should, and yet it feels as though it does. You stretch one hand across the sheet, palm flat, fingers splayed. The linen is no longer cold. It welcomes you, softened by your hours of presence. The fabric seems to lean toward your skin, eager to keep the connection. You keep your hand there a while, sensing its quiet gratitude. Your eyes drift shut again, and behind them comes not dream but stillness. You do not wander far into visions. You simply remain, resting in a darkness that has no edges. It is an ocean without waves, and you float without effort. A voice outside the chamber murmurs something brief, then stops. You do not catch the words, only the tone, measured, ordinary, routine. It does not matter what was said, because it was not for you. Nothing beyond this quilt is for you, at least not tonight. The mattress dips slightly beneath you, not because of movement, but because of time. The longer you lie here, the more it accepts you, the deeper you sink into its memory. The straw inside has reshaped itself around you. It will not remember tomorrow when nobles rest here instead. But for now, it is your impression it holds. You close your eyes, and everything pauses. The castle could collapse, and you would not know. The night could stretch twice its length, and you would not notice. All that remains certain is the warmth, the steady rhythm of your breath, and the chamber that keeps its secrets without complaint. The silence has grown so complete it nearly hums. It is not absence but fullness, a weight pressing gently into the air. You breathe within it, and it responds like a blanket layered upon the quilt. Nothing disturbs it except the faint sound of your breath. You lie still, though your thoughts ripple once more. They are not sharp thoughts, not insistent, just small wanderings. The flicker of memory, the outline of routine, the sense of time's passage without its urgency. You think of how you will rise eventually, though not now. You think of how another will replace you tomorrow. The thought carries no sting. It is simply the way of things. The air feels heavier now, touched by the quiet condensation of night. You imagine the frost thickening on the window glass, drawing its patterns like delicate lace. No one will see them until morning, yet the frost works anyway, patient and precise. It is not unlike you, lying here unseen, doing your work in silence. Your body has grown softer, melting deeper into the bed. You could not tense if you tried. Each limb has surrendered to gravity, to warmth, to the slow patience of stillness. You hear the faint crackle of firewood from somewhere distant. It is not in your chamber, but the sound finds its way through walls. It adds a faint rhythm, like someone whispering a story you cannot make out. You do not lean to hear more clearly. You let it remain faint, blurred, easy to ignore. Your eyes close fully now, and you forget to open them again. You do not need sight. Everything important can be felt. The quilt, the mattress, the steady draw of air through your lungs. Sight would only interrupt. The night folds around you, and you fold into it, a smaller shape within a larger one. Neither resists the other. The chamber no longer feels like a room. It is more like a cocoon, spun from warmth and stone and silence. You lie at its center, unhurried, untroubled, unnoticed. The bed accepts your shape fully now. The quilt molds to you so completely that you no longer wonder where its weight ends and yours begins. You have become part of it, just another element of the chamber's stillness. Your breath fogs faintly in the cold air that slips past the quilt, but the fog vanishes quickly. Warmth reclaims everything. Even the air above you seems to carry traces of your body heat, faint currents invisible but real. You drift in and out of half-sleep, not dreaming, not waking, simply existing in the stretch between. Time loses its edges. You could not say if minutes or hours pass. You are not asked to measure them. You are asked only to remain. And so you remain. The faintest sound comes through the door. A latch, somewhere in the corridor. A footstep too light to follow. You do not move at it. The sound disappears quickly, swallowed by stone. This chamber is a vessel, and nothing spills into it. unless allowed. You smile faintly at the thought that even the nobles will never know. They will come, they will sleep, they will wake. They will never wonder why the bed met them with kindness instead of cold. They will never know of the boy who gave his warmth first. Perhaps that is better. The sheets need not tell stories. Your body sinks further, and you drift again into a rest deeper than thought. The night has thickened, and so has your stillness. The chamber is hushed to the point of vanishing, a hollow filled only with your presence. The bed is the world now, and nothing outside can intrude. Your skin recognizes the difference between air and quilt. The quilt presses soft and heavy. The air presses light and cool. Both belong to you, and you belong to them. You breathe slowly, counting nothing, measuring nothing. Each breath exists alone, complete, followed by another without hurry. It is a chain without links. You feel the straw mattress shift beneath you, tiny movements as though it resettles. It creaks softly, a sound not of protest but of accommodation. The bed reshapes around you, acknowledging your place. Your eyelids lower again, and darkness settles in your vision. It is not frightening. It is the gentlest presence you could imagine. You lean into it fully, giving up the need to see. Somewhere in the castle, water drips. You hear it faintly, then not at all. The sound matters less than the space between sounds, the silence that returns. The quilt is heavier now, though it has not changed. It is your body that has grown lighter, surrendering weight to the mattress. You feel less and less distinct, more and more part of the stillness. And so you lie, until you cannot tell where you end and the chamber begins. The air grows colder, as dawn lingers at the edge of thought. Though you do not rise to meet it, you are still wrapped, weightless, indistinguishable from the bed. The quilt is no longer just cloth. It is a second skin, and you are folded within it. The mattress no longer just straw. It has become ground, earth, foundation. You sense morning waiting somewhere beyond the window, though you do not turn to see it. It does not matter. You will not be the one to greet it first. The nobles will come. They will take this bed, this warmth, this comfort. You will slip away, leaving only the faintest memory in the cloth. You do not mind. That has always been the rhythm. You prepare, they enjoy, you disappear. For now, though, it is only you. The chamber quiets into its deepest stillness. Even time seems reluctant to continue. You lie here, not moving, not needing. The quilt, the mattress, the cool air, the faint sounds of stone, they all hold you as though you were always meant to be here. Your breath is the only motion, in, out, steady, endless. The bed accepts it, the chamber accepts it, the night accepts it. You think nothing, or perhaps you think everything, blurred into one soft edge. The warmth is enough. The silence is enough. The stillness is enough. The boy who warms beds leaves nothing behind but comfort. And comfort is all that matters. You breathe slowly now, not because you choose to, but because the chamber has persuaded you. Each breath arrives in its own time, long unhurried, like a tide that knows it cannot be rushed. The quilt no longer feels heavy. It is simply part of you, no more separate than your own skin. The mattress does not creak, the air does not shift, everything has agreed to stillness. You could open your eyes, but you do not need to. Darkness rests gently over them, kind and without weight. Even the faint chill in the corners of the room no longer matters, for the warmth you've given has spread, claiming everything within reach. The bed is no longer a bed. It is a cocoon, a small world in which you are both guest and maker. The castle itself is quiet. Servants rest in their corners, nobles dream in their chambers. But here, in this narrow room, you lie at the center of a silence too complete to break. You imagine morning coming, though you will not see it here. You imagine another lying where you lie now, never wondering why the sheets feel soft, why the mattress feels ready, why the chamber feels more gentle than it should. That will be your gift, invisible, unnoticed, a warmth that lingers even when you are gone. And so the night closes its hands around you. The chamber, the quilt, the mattress, the breath, all together they keep you, until the thought of movement dissolves, until the thought of waking drifts away. Only comfort remains. Only stillness remains. And in that stillness, you are enough. We hope this glimpse into old customs has been a calm and pleasant one. If it made you curious for more, you can like, share, or leave a kind comment. And if you wish, subscribe to be here for the next unhurried tradition we explore together. End of script. Sweet dreams.